Recording. That's all on. If I'm really lucky, y'all can hear me on the pooter.
We can hear you. Hi, Bob.
Hey. Theoretically, we're going to have a gang online, so we shall see. Oh, good, I've got a pulse rate. And if you ask Renee, she'll be able to tell you who made those, because I know they're local. It might even be on the back or something. Yeah, they really did a beautiful job. Yay, people are showing up there.
I love what the mixed media when they put crystals in it.
Yeah. And we'll get started here in a second. So sad. How do?
How are you?
I'm good.
Anybody sitting here yet? Awesome.
Back for more, huh?
Well, universe had something else for me today.
Yeah.
I drove here and I popped my tire.
Oh no.
But it's all good.
I hope you had a spare.
Oh no, I have a spare.
Okay, good.
It's really funny. Well, I'm like standing out there and I'm like, doing the thing. And,
Right.
well, a nice gentleman stopped and he's like, "Do you need help?" I'm like, "Do you have gloves?" Well, he was a motorcyclist and he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You probably faster at this, so I gotta go through class."
That's it. Some more people waiting to get on than I see. I see the problem. Oh, see that I'm messing up. Slacking on my job. Yeah, you look at this. Of course. It's funny, wow, bunches of folks. The larger of those two, I had never heard of that author. And it's always interesting how much Amazon influences the books we like. I know all of, and I hate to say it, I do not know that, and it's a Black author, and it's a phenomenal book, and I love everything they've written. And it wasn't until after I had looked for it, because somebody showed me the book, that all of a sudden this whole other array of herbal books that were written by non-white people showed up, and it was fascinating.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, our board of farming.
Yeah,
folks,
yeah.
I saw something similar to this the other day in the tea house. I went through it and like all my primary ailments.
Yeah.
We struggle with the fact that everything that is one of our tools is geared to like words, not just white people, but like white people. Like we're not all any one thing.
No, I have two colors.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We were just having a color discussion right before.
All right.
All right, what time is it?
It is time.
Okay, so I want you to go call anybody back from the
Yeah, by the time they get in here, it'll be time to start, because it is 6:30 and I have way too much stuff that I'm gonna pretend to cover. I'm like, holy crap, we got a big crowd. Hey. Somebody took your table. All right. What up, Noah? I see you on there. So many new faces. It's frightening. I'm going to let Renee finish chasing people in and we'll get started. Too many distractions in the garden. All right, we're going to get started there, love.
All right.
And I'm going to keep trying to.
Would you like me to start us off?
You're welcome to. I'm going to keep clicking randomly.
So, my phone just let me know I have a class I need to get to. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have made me on time. Hey there, I am here so you can see me. So I'm not just yelling. Hey, I am Renee Prince, and next to me is Bob Linde, and we are part of the School of Herbal Studies, and we're here talking about digestion and the focus that we should have and how that all pans out. Bob and I are both clinical practicing herbalists. Bob is a doctor of Oriental medicine, a Chinese herbalist and a Western herbalist, and a traditional healer. And I am a Western herbalist and a traditional healer. And we run a student clinic and we see lots of people because of that. And this is just one of those nights where we like to give something to the public and to the community, and we get more questions and see more problems off of things like digestion. So we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping with all of you. So for the people that are here and have never been here before, we have copious amounts of bathrooms and things that you need. Please don't be in need. We are clinical practitioners. If something is wrong, flag me down, let me know, don't feel sick. Lots of teas are out there, hot and cold water, anything you may need, just flag me down. There's a bathroom right behind us and 2 through that door, and we will unitalk crazy forever and never stop. So if you need to get up and do something, it won't interrupt us, it won't matter, we'll just keep talking. And so that's not a problem there. For anybody that's online, I am moderating for us tonight, and I'm just as wordy as Bob is. And so if you need to ask a question and you're not brave enough to unmute yourself, you unmute yourself by pushing the microphone, which is that little red thing at the bottom left-hand corner of your box on your screen. And you can just say, Bob, I have a question. If you don't want to do that, if you throw it into the chat, I'm happy to push like on it so you know that I read it, and I'll either stop him or I'll answer if it's something that we know. We're also on a delay. And so if we're past your subject, it doesn't matter. If you just get to hear it and then it comes up, just let me know and type it in, and we'll definitely go back. And I think that's it. I think does that seem like
that's plenty?
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. So Bob has a lot to say, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to kind of check you guys for handouts. And if you don't have one, I'm going to bring one to you as we get started.
And they were all emailed out to everybody too. So, hi. Needless to say, I'm super excited about what a huge turnout we've got, like full house in person, and I guess we don't have a full house because you can't, but I think we had over 55 people sign up for a class tonight, which is just amazing. So I appreciate everybody showing up, whether in person or online. And I know it's easy. I think Trisha, most of you had emailed her, so she's got your email. She can send out the recording. If you didn't get a handout, she'll use emailed that out as well. So there's kind of, well, there's many alternative motives for doing this particular class. And as Renee said, we've got, we try to at least once a month do a free class, sometimes more often, depending on how fired up I am. Thursday night, we've got like more spiritual classes. And then, oh, sorry, I got to keep letting people in. Zoom's forced us all to allow people in. And then we've got all of our weekend herbal classes as well, both in Western and Chinese, and then weird ones that we do standalone, like pets. And this weekend is flower essence class and other kinds of cool things. And of course, with COVID, they're all online as well as in person. So bonus. So two of the reasons I did this class, well, I think everybody's kind of got digestive issues. I'm going to guess that most of you do, and that's why you're here. And it's going to always be a challenge, because I know we've got some practitioners on here, and then we got people who are here for their own interest. And so I'm going to do my very best to talk to whatever level you all need. And I'm going to say that one of the things that brought me into a professional level of herbal medicine, that it's the reason I ended up running away to acupuncture school at some point, was because of my own digestive issues. Thanks, U.S. Army. I was dealing with Desert Storm Syndrome, which was a variety of issues that were immune and digestive, and MDs couldn't figure it out. All the stuff that I thought I knew, nothing worked. And so finally, I ended up going into, as a patient, into the local acupuncture school. And after a few attempts and getting the right practitioner, I ended up having some real success, and it completely changed the way that I utilize it and understand herbal medicine, both Western herbs and Chinese herbs. But the other reason is you all are going to kind of get a mini version. I'm doing this class basically, but with more crazy Chinese words. I'm doing this class this August for the acupuncture conference down in Fort Lauderdale. So I'm going to do it with less Western herbs, and I'll do more cool Chinese stuff, but I'll torture them with the Western thought as well, because not enough acupuncturists are exposed to the Western herbal thought, and I think it's really important, and ultimately it's really effective. So it's not to diminish the Chinese aspect of things, but there's benefits in both roles, and there's herbs that are phenomenal in both. So I did sneak a little Chinese in there, just, you know, from my Chinese folks out there.
He's got to have a practice drive on.
Yeah, right. So, sorry, I gotta keep letting these folks in. All right. And just a reminder, like if anybody's got questions as I fumble along here, do feel free to type it in the chat. Renee can, if you missed something or I said something completely insane, it's an easy way to just get clarification on all that.
Did I really hear him say that?
Yeah. So the biggest problem that I had, we were still talking about it this morning, because I have 1,000 ideas and 1,000 things I always want to talk about, and digestion being probably the thing I babble about the most to our students as we go into clinicals, and so both Western and Chinese.
Well, unfortunately, we see an apex of all things rest in that area.
And my running joke is we all have eating disorders, whether we're dealing with the standard American diet or the current fad of what's good for us kind of idea. We're all struggling to our own desires when it comes to food, our own upbringing, as well as trying to approach it and fumble our way through what the internet tells us we're supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, it doesn't always come out so great when we're utilizing some of those things that we Googled or Dr. Oz told us or the medical medium. All those things don't always work because there's no one size fits all. And that's really one of the struggles just on trying to eat healthy. And so after Renee, we went and did an herb walk this morning, more for our own benefits, and we did it on YouTube. But we kind of argued out, like, all right, what are we actually going to talk about? And I have my own things that I think are leading the parade when I talk about digestive health. And so I'm going to try to get all 4 of these overviews, and we'll look at some specific herbs that you can utilize with a few cautions and understandings as we look at them. But we're going to try to deal with acid reflux, general bloating, constipation and diarrhea, and the effects of stress on our digestive system. And that's the one not a lot of people think about. So let's talk, and it's like, I got to jump right into the whole acid reflux thing. And I get a little controversial with this sometimes
I wanted to
because
see what he was drinking to see if he was like
my
literally
God.
dealing with his own acid reflux.
No.
Why did you
no, I'm
pause
just
for a
thirsty.
minute?
I was out there sweating a lot.
Yeah.
Moving logs this morning or this afternoon, I guess. So one of the more, there's like, when you look at the top 25 prescription medications out there, the acid reflux medications are well represented in that top 25. And now we have a lot of what used to be prescription meds are you're able to buy over the counter. And so there's either our entire digestive systems are completely screwed up, or we're all doing a horrible job of eating all the right things, or it may actually be a little bit poorly understood and overdiagnosed. So the idea that all of us have this excessive production of stomach acid that is causing all of this horrible disease, you don't find a lot of MDs testing what your pH is of your stomach. And so we have a problem as we age. And I don't know about anybody else, but I was 20 something. I could eat anything. I could drink anything. There was never any bloating. I had a cast iron stomach. It was the running joke in town. And as I've gotten older, my stomach has gotten a little bit more sensitive. And occasionally I do get acid reflux, except it's not from excess acid. And I know that sounds confusing sometimes. So the reality is you go in, you're like, I got some pain and discomfort, and maybe I got some heartburn, and maybe they do a little scope and they go, oh, look, you got Barrett's esophagus, which is fancy talk for inflammation in your esophagus, which does potentiate other issues if that's ignored long term. So as we age, some of you are my age, some of you are younger, but I'm here to tell you that as we age, everything declines a little bit. All of our hormones, all of our secretions, everything kind of just gets a little tired and a little bit slower, except according to Western medicine, except for our stomach acid. This is the one thing that is just partying down and hyper producing. It's a lie. And so the reality is our stomach acid declines the same way all of our other secretions do as we age. And what happens is a lot of people go through a series of different acid reduction medications over the counter, Tums. They're taking the PPIs, the proton pump inhibitors that Western medicine is going to prescribe to them. And they still kind of struggle with it. And they really just start then eating very delicately, and they're only eating certain foods. And yet most people have never gone to a gastroenterologist, somebody who specializes in it. And even if you had, the chances are they never tested your pH and the amount of acid you had in your stomach. So there's some problems. It's important that we start to think about the reality of, if we have too much stomach production, what does that look like? And some of the ways that I teach our students to look at this, and I would encourage you to ask yourself these same questions, is if when your stomach is empty, you have acid reflux, you might have too much stomach acid. If you get acid reflux when there's food in your stomach, which would absorb any excess acid, you have low stomach acid. And then I'll talk about a third thing in a second. And I'll show you how to fix that too. And most people get acid reflux. And I'm sorry, if you're, throwing back a pitcher of beer and eating really bad pizza and you get acid reflux, that's your problem. Uh, but if you're just having very normal, you're eating a vegetable, you're eating a very normal, a meat, a vegetable, not even like nothing really bad.
Starch
And,
meat.
yeah, and a vegetable, and you're getting acid reflux, you have low stomach acid. And the MDs are taught this, but they quickly forget it because they don't really have a quick fix or a good answer for that. So when we talk about stomach acid, we're talking about hydrochloric acid. And that's a really scary thing. It's like
HCl.
HCl, if I drop it on the floor, I eat a hole in the floor. And so our stomach is this very specialized organ that has to secrete enough of a protective lining that allows for the stomach acid in there with specialized cells that squirt out all the good digestive juices. And unfortunately, it tends to decline. And you can go to the local health food store and get hydrochloric acid pills. Sometimes has other things in there like betony and maybe some other digestive enzymes. The short answer is, if you take that and you don't get acid reflux, you don't make it worse, your stomach acid was low. And if you do have low stomach acid, or you're taking acid reducing medications, i.e. anything from Tums all the way up to Nexium and Prevacid and all the other different things. If you're reducing your stomach acid has a role in our body. Its job is to protect us from fungus, yeast, viruses, bacteria. It kills stuff so that it doesn't pass into our intestinal tract. And if those things are passing through because of low stomach acid, our risk of C. diff, which is a bacterial infection and overgrowth.
I'll write that into the chat.
Yep, thank you. That we tend to see with people who take a lot of antibiotics. It throws their gut flora, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute. But especially for the elderly who are in the hospital, oftentimes on antibiotics, it is this, and C. diff causes really chronic, excessive diarrhea that's really smelly and really contagious. Sorry, everybody just had dinner, right? Awesome. If you didn't have acid reflux, I'm going to give it to you.
This is a good introduction to Bob.
Yeah, it's all about the poop. And so that causes dehydration. And oftentimes if their loved ones are exposed to it, they can catch it as well. And it frequently leads to death, unfortunately. So we're increasing the risk of literally dying. And here's a really scary thing. Most people, if you're put into the hospital overnight, you're automatically, no matter what your issue is, given acid reflux meds because of crappy hospital food, I can guess. And so immediately, one of the scariest things in a hospital, you have to go into isolation. They have to wear all the spacesuit stuff if you have C. diff. They're immediately putting you at higher risk of that, which is insane. So the other thing that our stomach acid provides us for is it breaks down our food. That's its main job, really, is to break down that food, and specifically our ability to absorb minerals. So we put minerals into, like, if you ever bought a vitamin, you're buying like magnesium or something like that, and there's like, make sure you buy the chelated one. Chelated is fancy talk where they put a citric acid molecule on there because the acid makes it more absorbable. And so you're eating food that's high in minerals, and its ability to break down, put it in solution so that our body can absorb it is destroyed if you don't have good stomach acid or if you're on acid reflux reducing medications. So if you took a Tums once, at the holidays, who cares? Honestly, no big deal. Yeah, the world will not end. You're not going to die. You're not going to get C. diff probably. But if you are taking acid reflux meds the way they're prescribed every single day for the rest of your life,
I got it. Just keep going.
For the rest of your life, your ability to absorb nutrients has gone down dramatically. So your magnesium, your calcium, your potassium, your iron are all reduced dramatically to the point where, and I'll talk about the horrible side effects of that here shortly, and also your B12. You can't absorb B12 if you don't have enough stomach acid.
Okay, this is, you have every right to turn me and be like, nope, this is not a question. This is me, because I'm instigating, because we're talking to some normal people.
Fine.
So how long do you think of taking a prescribed acid medicine versus a Tums a couple days, a week before you start to have a backlash or a problem? And number two, why does it matter if we reduce our Bs? Why does it matter if we reduce?
Yep.
Okay.
So probably if you took it for more than a month, you would start to see some adverse side effects that you may or may not know and relate back to an acid reflux med.
In your opinion,
In my opinion.
and in your opinion, a week of doing it, would that cause
No, a month.
I know, I'm asking you.
Yeah.
A week of doing it, would that cause that slingshot effect where you, when you stopped, you would think that you had high acid?
Yeah.
So talk about that
We'll
for
get
a
to that.
second. Or if you
so-
get to it, yeah.
Yeah. So the reality, depending on what your B12 levels are, if you're vegan and not supplementing, if you've had any kind of inflammatory gut issue, chances are you're going to be B12 deficient. I find that more people than not are. And with the minerals, again, it just kind of depends on what your diet, your ability to absorb has been over your life, how fast those things will show up. The biggest things I see that show up when people are deficient in minerals in particular, high blood pressure, constipation, leg cramps, anxiety, I don't know,
Sleep, restlessness.
Yeah.
Sleep.
restless leg syndrome. All of those are very common to see. With B12 deficiency, we can get anything from, neuropathy to fatigue to muscle pain. All of those can be signs of B12 deficiency. And it can be from mild to extreme. I actually just saw a client this week where he had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia at a very young age. And I asked way too many questions. I went through and I looked at his tongue and asked about blood work. And the reality was he didn't actually have any of the proper patterns that we associate with fibromyalgia. He literally had digestive issues since the day he was born. They had never improved, had been put on way too many antibiotics, and ultimately was regularly taking acid reflux meds, and all of his fibromyalgia-like pain, and was on opiate drugs for the pain. I'm 95% sure it's a B12 deficiency. And literally all we need to do is start to correct his digestion. And this, his lifelong experience with, and anxiety and antidepressants, all of that just stemmed from lousy digestion, an inflammatory gut issue, and nobody bothered to check some really basic stuff on this guy. So one of the fascinating things is, and I am not an anti-drug person. I'm not an anti-doctor person. I'm a fan of all of us have something to bring to the table. I love the tests. You get hit by a truck, go to the hospital. They do a better job at heroic medicine than I do. But sometimes when we look at chronic disease, they fall short of what we would like. Their tests are there, but they're not being utilized appropriately. And we make an assumption that everything goes through very vigorous testing, and in many ways it does. There's a problem though. If anybody actually reads just even on the box of your acid reflux meds, it says use it for 2 weeks and then consult your doctor. And this drug shouldn't be taken for more than 6 weeks. And then when you go back and look at the research, there is zero, big goose egg, research on acid reflux meds past 1 year. They have no idea what the side effects are.
And the reason it said 2 weeks is because it used to be there was no research past 2 weeks. So we know people that have been on acid reflux since birth, because babies throw up and they're the...
That is as diagnosis, as it is the largest group of humans being diagnosed acid reflux meds is infants. Because here's a shocker, babies spit up, for any of you who are parents, they puke.
And have stomach issues.
And so they don't need that. So can you imagine reducing the B12 levels and the all of their potassium, iron, and so forth, and an infant at that young of an age?
So we have people that were prescribed at 19, 20, 21, 22, and they were like beer drinking at college, and now here they are 20 years later, and it was only studied for 2 weeks.
And not to beat up on the drug, because you know what, if you're in pain, take it. Like if it's Christmas holidays and you're eating way too much crap and drinking too much, whatever, take your Tums, take your Nexium, no big deal. It's the problem is when we take it for more than 2 weeks and then we stop cold turkey off of it, you'll get what's called a rebound, i.e. if you didn't have acid reflux, you do now, because we are holding back those acid secretions, and then all of a sudden we went, ha! And if you ever held down the fountain and when your friend went to drink it, you pulled your finger away and it blew it into their face. Yes.
That's what happened.
People who were taking Tums because they claimed your bones.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
it's
Yes,
the
I know.
wrong-
That's horrible
Yeah,
advice.
yeah.
It's terrible source of calcium.
Yeah, yeah, it's really bad.
And
And making it non-absorbable.
yeah, it's a non-absorbable. I had thought most nurses had stopped advising and doctors had stopped advising Tums as a viable source of calcium, but and most of us aren't calcium deficient anyway. For folks dealing with osteoporosis, it's probably an acid issue, but more likely they're deficient in magnesium and vitamin D. Way more common than we have so much calcium supplemented stuff. How is it that we don't have enough? And so we should look at why is our body not utilizing the calcium. And if you really want to hear weirdness, sesame seeds are a better source of calcium than probably, and I'm not vegan, and yet I'm here to tell you some tahini, some hummus will give you more calcium than milk. So it's an easy way to get calcium through our food, and too much calcium will actually cause heart disease. So if your dietary, and this is a research study out of England, if I remember right, more than 2,600 milligrams of total dietary calcium daily, and your increased risk of hardening of the arteries and heart disease is exponentially increased. And if you're popping a couple of Tums a day, taking a multivitamin and actually eating food, fruits and vegetables and meat, you will exceed that. So it's scary numbers when we start to look at like what's being advised and what the research actually tells us is sometimes contrary to that. So there are many building blocks for that. And how come is the question I always like to ask. Why aren't you absorbing the calcium if you're taking it? So if we stop taking our acid reflux meds, what we end up with is acid reflux and actually an excessive production and pain. It hurts. If you've ever had heartburn, it sucks. People go to the ER thinking they're having literally a heart attack because the symptoms mimic a heart attack, and you should go to the ER, find out. So what we have to do is sometimes mitigate, if you're already on them, to find out whether you actually need them, is to stop. And if you're like, okay, I've been off of these for a couple of weeks, I took the HCL, it made it worse, then go back on them. Maybe you need that. But rarely do I find people go back on it. I find most people don't need it. And it's reality, it is frequently a low stomach acid issue. And we'll talk about some exceptions to that. So if you're not on them, but you're getting acid reflux, or you've been told you have silent reflux, I always suggest a hydrochloric acid supplementation. If it makes it worse, stop. It's not that. That's a really simple thing. So like you tried it for 3 days, it sucked every single time. It ain't that. If you go, I'm taking this, but I don't notice anything, then it's doing a good job. And you can fiddle with dosing on that, but I usually say just follow the dosing instructions on whatever brand or whatever bottle. I don't even have a preferred band. HCL is HCL. It's a very specific chemical. So the thing is, we're not supposed to have that. And I'm sorry, I think herbs do all kinds of awesome stuff. So there's an herb that is not utilized enough. Horses get it more than we do. It is considered the father of nutrition. I'm sure there's a dude that's got a name there, but alfalfa is specific, and it's the least talked about function of alfalfa, is specific for improving the gastric lining of your stomach, i.e. that nice mucosal lining that has all these specialized secreting cells in there. Alfalfa is just a food, whether it's alfalfa sprouts, you can get the alfalfa dried thing you put in your smoothie, whatever, I don't care. There's 1,000 different ways to do it. You can create an alfalfa field and create the nitrogen fixing. It's good for your garden. So it has many roles, and you can feed it to your horse. The cautions I always have with alfalfa is it also increases breast milk. Ooh, you mean it works on more than one secreting gland? So for breastfeeding women who don't need extra breast milk, then that might be an issue for them. But if they have low breast milk secretions, alfalfa has value added. I put a meh, but it is considered high in phytoestrogens. So it's used sometimes as a standalone or in formula for menopausal symptoms. But if you have any kind of estrogen sensitivity, i.e. cancer or cyst or anything like that, where estrogen's an issue, I'd say talk to somebody before you start ingesting, tablespoons of alfalfa. So alfalfa tends to fix the underlying problem, so we don't have to take HCL for the rest of our life.
I have a quick question about
Yup.
that, and it's okay for you not to want to discuss it.
Yep.
Do you find this to be an issue with somebody who's on Coumadin because it will?
It's high in vitamin K. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was the other thing.
So we're
So-
unclogging things and making
Yeah.
things move. We're high in vitamin K,
So-
so that if you were already on a blood thinner.
Yeah, and with blood thinners, unfortunately, you're supposed to stay away from all the vegetables. This one included because it is considered high in K, so it's also good for bone density. It's also high in potassium, which is great for your minerals. And if you're on kidney dialysis, obviously investigate everything before you eat it.
Yeah, very diuretic as well.
Yeah, and it has some diuretic properties to it as well. So really just an all around seems to improve the functioning of a variety of different glands and is nutrient rich. One of the things that we talk about a lot is licorice. And, for those of you who are herbalists, it's a demulcent. It's mucilaginous, which is fancy talk for slimalicious. So it's not as bad as okra, but it has a very moistening property to it. The problem with licorice is if you do too much, it can cause some kidney issues. And so if you're on high blood pressure, kidney dialysis, don't be chowing down on some licorice. The safe way to take licorice so that it's specifically benefiting the stomach is what's called DGL licorice,
I'll
which
write
is
it into the chat.
deglycerized, which is a chemical in the licorice. And so that's been removed, and it doesn't affect the potassium balance or the blood pressure or any kidney function. So it's safe to take it like that, and it will quickly soothe and coat the stomach and the esophagus if you're getting some of that rebound reflux as you're trying to work your way off of acid reflux meds.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what Bob? See, did you? Right. Okay. So I wasn't kidding, especially those who
I
know
can
us,
spout some crap.
that
so.
you literally have to stop.
You have to stop
or
me.
he will not stop. Like both of us will do that, and that's why I just did that. Okay, so we'll go here first, then over to you, Patty. What was your?
It's the perfect time. I didn't have the question for a long time. What's just a question in the licorice as a tea? Is that okay?
Yes. So yes and no. So the straight licorice, small amounts occasionally, totally fine. When we see the adverse event reports on licorice, I don't believe there's any from just doing like a little licorice in an herb formula or in a tea. It's when people eat the licorice concentrate and they're popping those all day long like Tic Tacs. Because a lot of people do it because of acid reflux, that they're doing these little things that are like the equivalent of doing 3 or 4 tablespoons in a little tablet. They're popping those all day long. And so then after a few months, we'll see that hypertension, high blood pressure, and kidney imbalances.
But that being said, if you're already having problems with that, like you already have heartburn, you already have hypertension, like I just today took it out of 2 formulas in a very low dose, solely because the person already has an uncontrollable blood pressure. I don't even want to chance it. So I'm not going to put it in there at all. And it's really very commonly used.
Yeah.
So in general sense, if you're not being crazy about it and eating a large amount of something, then you should be okay. and just a tea is.
And
not
I'm
an
going to say
issue.
very common to use for naturopathic physicians.
It's on the shelf in Walmart with traditional
yeah.
medicinals. We talk about it
And-
all the time, throat coat teas there.
And in particular, and it's going to relate back kind of to the last part if we get a chance to talk to it, it's used to help with stress as well. So it has an adrenal function,
Yeah.
the licorice. And the DGL, the deglycerized one, isn't as effective
ask you
for
that.
stress as the actual licorice is. So you pay attention. If you start, monitor your blood pressure, if you have risk factors, then be cautious at the very least, and always do the whole herb rather than some kind of a chemical extraction or concentrate of it, because that's where the slippery slope really happens.
In all of these, we're not talking about something that's over the counter. We're talking about a full plant, and we don't worry as much when it's coming the way it's supposed to in that package.
Nature does it right.
Yeah, versus us making it into something else. How do you,
But
what's your thing?
I just was curious, because, said alfalfa, as far as the women, we're talking about some of the negative.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what that meant.
It's interesting. I've got, again, a man with breast cancer that's estrogen sensitive. It's unfortunately increasing in its frequency. So it's funny, alfalfa is actually used as an aphrodisiac as well, for both men and women.
Because it's building?
And fertility, yeah, because it's so
nourishing?
nourishing. And so phytoestrogens, we throw out a caution because it's in the books, and we don't really see a lot of
Again,
problems
as a
with
whole
that.
plant, it's not
Yeah.
a thing.
And so we haven't seen any kind of, men developing breasts or anything like that if they eat a lot of alfalfa. I'm sure if you eat 10 pounds a day.
I'm
maybe
laughing that you say
should-
that, because when I'm in South America, that's another one that the nuns are like force feeding me.
Uh,
And so if they thought it in any sense of the word was an aphrodisiac, they would not be doing that.
Yeah, right. So it is really, I think the alfalfa is so beneficial because it's so, we talk about superfoods all the time, and we always got to get them from some exotic land, and that way we can charge more money for it.
Literally
The-
in your backyard. Watch
The
this.
reality
Yeah.
is we're surrounded by things that are a cover crop in the fields,
Mhm.
and nobody bothered to check the nutrients of that. And it has this deep tap root that penetrates in, pulls all the minerals from the earth, makes them in a bioavailable, it's nitrogen fixing. It makes our soil extra beneficial. It has so many benefits, and we literally feed it to the horses. It's ridiculous.
The alfalfa
But
that's
it's not exciting. It's
No.
no pizzazz to it.
the alfalfa in South America, and the place I was talking about where the nuns have a botanical spot, it's almost blue. It's so
Oh,
dense
wow.
and green.
Yeah.
It's like that little,
Full of
like,
chlorophyll.
yeah, it's unbelievable to
Yeah.
see it. I couldn't identify it. I didn't know what they were talking about.
It's very boring.
I was told to go get the alfalfa, and I was like looking around for it because like it could possibly be this. It's also about as high as my hip, instead of it being a cover crop on the ground that's a little
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they get huge.
super healthy.
Was there a
Any other
question?
questions? Any questions online? Anybody want to pop up? All
Yeah.
right.
So I put marshmallow and slippery elm. We argue about herb pretty much all day long.
Is that why you did that? Did you do that for me?
Well, I think it was more important
Bless
to
your
talk
heart.
about the slippery elm also because we don't encourage slippery elm's use except for short terms and very specific
Why, Bob?
indication.
Why?
The slippery elm is an endangered species. When we had the Dutch elm disease came to the United States in the 70s, I think it was. Not only did it decimate the Dutch elms, but it also decimated the slippery elms. And so this was a crop that was naturally growing. People weren't growing slippery elm trees to harvest for medicine. They were like, there's plenty out in the forest. And then they all died. And so it was an issue. And I don't know, do we have slippery elm? I can't see the flags up there. So the United Plant Savers,
No
those
slippery elm on that one.
cool flags up there, they're our US organization that tries to educate about those plants that are either threatened or at risk or literally endangered. They were doing a lot to protect golden seal, to protect things like false unicorn root, ginseng, that they're really doing a good job in preserving our access to wild grown medicine by encouraging farmers to grow those things. And slippery elm is not yet out of the woods, that we're just finding those first commercially viable. Sorry, I have way too many corny.
But why is that important? Why would we use slippery elm over marsh if we were going to need to do that?
So slippery elm is a phenomenal herb, and it is, again, mucilaginous. And so it really helps to soothe and protect your digestive system from the esophagus down. But it's considered one of those very nutrient dense foods that its specific indication is inflammatory guts in infants with a failure to thrive, i.e. they're not putting on weight, they're not pooping, they're not eating. We make a gruel out of the powdered slippery elm bark, and we feed it.
So inviting.
It's what it's called. And it is both anti-inflammatory and nutrient dense, and so has great value for that. So to use this as it helps with my constipation or my diarrhea. Yes, it works. We can just change the amount of water we put in it, and it can cause one or the other. But there's 50 other things we could use. When we're talking an infant with failure to thrive, there's a very limited number of things that we can utilize.
So let's slightly reverse that real quick. And it's relevant, I promise. And that if you are going to deal then with someone who has been on for a very long time, or somebody who's wasting, and somebody who's an elder, and somebody who's just having problems because of a duration of insufficiency, it would also be correct failure to thrive for something like that. It's the in-between people that we can go to another herb for.
And short term, if you're getting off of acid reflux meds, if you're dealing with a situational, slippery elm's fine. It's a little pricey, it's accessible, but recognizing its place as a threatened
Use
species.
it with intention.
Marshmallow is
a question.
And I already bought CBL.
Yeah.
It's good for you.
How much should I take?
You don't need a lot.
Half a gram to a gram if you're using it like Tums. If you're trying to repair something, then we would need 2 to 4 grams in probably 4 ounces of water several times a day. It depends on if it's just for at a moment's time, or if it's
And there's a
For
question.
fasting
I didn't get
easier.
it. Say that again.
Yeah, just for digestive easier to go to.
Oh, then you put probably a spoonful, which would be a teaspoon, would be 4.5 grams in 8 ounces of water in another tea that you're drinking like that. Yeah. Short term for sure. In fact, you can use marshmallow perfectly well, and it used to be at risk, and now it's not, and it's completely fine because of marshmallows. And it's completely fine to use that the same way, or chia seed the same way. And I'm happy to give you dosing for that when we leave. Yeah.
And thank you.
No problem.
There was a question that came up about can we use some of these demulcent or mucilaginous herbs for ulcers? And yes, but
Yeah. And so FYI, to an external ulcer, 100%. To a hot spot on a dog, to a baby's diaper
when
rash,
we're looking at stomach or
Bleeding
duodenal
ulcers.
ulcer, that can be life-threatening. And there's many causes for it. And the 2 primary causes we look at ulcers, one is the H. pylori, which is a specific type of bacteria that is naturally occurring in your body and belongs there, but it gets out of balance. And so those H. pylori bacteria actually will start to cause an ulcer to appear. And that can come either from a really crappy diet or stress. And so those are the 2 causes. And so depending on the cause of the ulcer and the severity, because if it's bleeding, it can kill you. So it's important that we recognize that may be the time for the MDs with the heroic medicine, both to take antibiotics to alleviate those H. pylori. And there's many herbs, to include the ones we've talked about, as well as the mastic gum from the Middle East that's
frankincense,
is myrrh, and things like okra, and anything else in the mallow family, really.
Hibiscus of any kind, including the floral one that's decorative.
But that's one that I would say definitely is almost a combination of all of these, and see an herbalist on that. Because that's a more serious issue that needs some more interventions, and work with your MD on that one as well.
Are you going to speak more about the other problems we have with reducing the H. pylori, or is that something for another class?
That's another.
Okay, go.
Unless I run out of things to say.
And
so the slippery elm, what a milder and longer term and not threatened is marshmallow. And the leaf and the root are both used. You can grow it here. It's not native. It would be maybe North Florida native, but it honestly, we've been able to keep it growing pretty nicely for 2 or 3 years, and able to harvest leaves, but it works dried just as well. It tastes like nothing. It's literally just like slippery water.
I use it for my soup thickeners and for my beef stew and stuff like that, instead of anything that would cause an inflammatory response. So that's how it just tastes like nothing, like whatever you want to, you can make a jello out of
So
it.
one of the things I wanted to talk about, I wanted to, as often as I could, as I talked about these herbs, was find something that we had around locally. And although peach is not native to Florida, the University of Florida has produced a number of species that grow, and we can produce fruit here, even in St. Pete, and I think even further south. We have a small peach tree out back right now that has a couple of tiny fruit. I'm really excited to get some fruit off of there. And so very few people know about peach leaf, and we can use it fresh or dried. It is specific for acid reflux, especially from stress. So technically, I should have put it down in the carminatives, or the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system, stress-related digestion. But it is a frequent cause for acid reflux, is the stress. So peach leaf is one of those superior digestive herbs, specific for acid reflux, specific for stress, that nobody knows. And you can literally pull that off of the leaves off your tree if you're obviously going up to Georgia. There's no
Just
shortage of
peach
peach.
tree or any stone fruit leaf?
It's specific to peach.
Okay.
And for those of you who are into energetics and so forth, peach is warming. Not hot, but warm.
I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, I know. It fools everybody, and the fruit as well.
I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, it's one of the few warm fruits, and is thought to nourish the blood. Sorry, off track. Yes.
But how do you determine acid reflux that's caused from stress versus?
And it's one of the things I like to say.
It's actually easy if you start paying attention, because
yeah, it can be.
if we're like watching the news when I'm
But-
getting ready to dinner, I like start immediately.
If you're watching the news over dinner,
Yeah.
it's stress. It's we so often, and I hate to say it, my profession is guilty of this. And I think a lot of people come to these lectures as guilty of it. It's an us or them kind of thing. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's important that we're working in conjunction with an MD. I love to get people scoped. They now have the little analysis swallow camera pill things. I think that's so cool.
A little creepy.
And so that can be an effective way to ensure it's not something like a bleeding ulcer. And it is also a good reason to see a well-trained herbalist as well, because they're going to ask you things like, is your poop changed? Is there dark tarry, might indicate blood showing up in the stools, specific abdominal pains that might be indicative of something scarier. Because it is important to make sure we're not getting a bleeding ulcer, and testing for H. pylori can be done a variety of different ways, but primarily that's one best done by an MD. Yeah.
Is vomiting part of?
It can be. So acid reflux can be that severe that there's vomiting associated with it. And certainly if there's vomiting up of blood, especially large amounts or like black clotty kind of stuff, like, nope, you got a bleeding ulcer. If you're main veining coffee like me, and then you got a little bit of streaks of blood, it's probably because you shouldn't be drinking so much caffeine. That can also cause both nausea, vomiting, and specks of blood. And alcohol and alcoholics are always at risk of ulcers. And it's called varicosities, where they can get just a bulging vein in their esophagus and anywhere else that can start to burst and bleed, and bad things happen, like death. And that's one reason to, somebody should stick a scope every once in a while. It's not a good time, but it's good to rule out scarier crap. And if vomiting is involved, we need to be more careful. That's not just have a little chamomile and ginger. Like, somebody needs to understand why. And there are many causes for vomiting as well. I've had the unique, I won't say it's pleasure, because the poor persons now, but there's things like cyclic vomiting syndrome and so forth that are fairly rare, that even affects kids. and not the usual causes, and actually not good solutions. There's things like esophageal constrictions that cause vomiting. So it's always important to understand that how come. And high or low acid is one potential cause for that.
Any questions about that?
I have a question that jumps a little bit back. The hydrochloric acid
Yeah.
with vinegar, like apple cider vinegar, do you substitute for that?
So that's a great
That's also-
question about apple cider vinegar and whether we can substitute that. And I love apple cider
We have
vinegar.
a
I'll put
slight
it,
argument about this.
yeah.
Go on.
And I know there's a lot of information out there. There's potential, and I do say potential issues because I don't know that it's an issue. It may not be enough to change, and actually, thank you. There was something I meant to bring up about this that I didn't. It may not be enough to change the stomach acid, the pH appropriately. And when I first tried it, because I'm like, I hate to say this, everything that's put out there, I try because my patients ask me, and I want to know, be able to speak from a level of experience. And doing shots of apple cider vinegar is rough. But in particular, you're putting acetic acid on your teeth, and it can have some potential downsides on your teeth. So either diluting it in water, or if you really have low stomach acid, I think the HCL in a capsule bypasses and goes right to where it needs to be in the stomach without irritating other tissues. One of the popular things that's put out there, and yep, I read it on the internet too, it was all over Facebook, the idea of alkalizing your body by doing everything from alkalizing pills, which are, it sounds really fancy, sodium bicarb, also known as baking soda, which will dramatically change your pH in your stomach, nowhere else. And what's it going to do? It's alkalizing your stomach, a place that's supposed to be acidic. And so if you are doing things like alkalizing water, alkalizing pills, to specifically alkalize, and it's going through your digestive tract, you are potentially reducing your absorption of stuff. And I know that is contrary to everything you've ever read. It's called science. Sorry.
I have a quick question that it's not really a question other than I just want to know if you want to comment on it. The use of the peach leaf, do you want it to be in tea? Do you want it to be raw? Do
Tea
you
is
want it
great.
fresh?
Yeah.
So I wrote
Dried
raw
or
dry.
fresh.
I wrote dry or fresh, or
Yeah.
in tea or in food. I just was wondering if you had a thought process to, just as you were talking about the apple cider vinegar, about whether or not you could take it like a Tums in a capsule form. I guess if you didn't have acid in your stomach, it wouldn't break it down well, but you know what I'm saying?
You know, I don't know.
To get a higher dose quickly.
Yeah, I don't know on the capsule. I've never seen peach leaf capsule
No,
for
we would
sale.
have to do it
You
for
have to
you,
do it
right?
yourself. Yeah.
A tincture. I think a tincture, which is weird.
So I'm not sure. It's not a bad tea. And especially if you add in something else like another digestive herb in there, it would be lovely.
Okay, so then we're gonna have another, hold one second, because this one came up first and then we'll go to you. We have another apple cider vinegar
Yeah.
question, and I'm gonna say real quick that my argument with Bob about the HCL, which he is totally right about, we see people that need gallons of HCL, but as a base for a bitters mix, where we're adding all those other things in,
Yeah,
it's
I do like that.
second to none, and I do believe is
And
replaceable.
we'll get to that in
Yeah,
the next
for
section.
sure. And so the question here is, do you recommend apple cider vinegar in hot water? I usually add it to my hot water, and I think of things like your kratom and your coffee and whatnot. And so we eat apple cider vinegar like it's going out of style for all kinds of different reasons.
So, and it kind of starts to go into the carminatives,
Yeah.
which is the bloating aspect here.
Oxymels we'll make
Yeah.
with it to help them go down
So,
easier and things like that.
Oh, and I'm sorry, you had a question.
It might be similar to the apple cider vinegar one.
Yeah.
What about kombucha? I've heard that it's good, I've heard that it's bad.
I love kombucha. It doesn't love me.
No,
It's bad for bloating, oddly enough. Even though it does have, like, especially if you're making it yourself, it's got all kinds of active things. Sometimes things we want, sometimes things we don't want. But the basis is still sugar.
it's sugar.
So the sugar's the problem?
And so if you were to do a healthy dosage of kombucha, it'd probably be about a tablespoon. But it's better than beer and soda.
Yeah, but it's not better than eating a Snickers bar once you drink a
Right.
whole one.
And so I would say
So-
occasionally enjoy it. I think they're yummy, but they're not good for me. And as a person who has chronic digestive issues and chronic sinusitis, if I eat anything yummy, it goes right to my nose or my gut. and it's way better than it used to be. If I have more than one kombucha every 2 or 3 days, my body will tell me. And I hate to say it, I hear that a lot. And so, nope, enjoy it because you like it, but know that you're not doing a health drink.
You have another question. It was.
I'm causing all kinds of trouble right from the start, I can tell.
Take kombucha for yourself, yeah, scobies, you leave it digest, ferments for a long time, the sugar goes out.
It kind of does, and it kind of doesn't. It actually changes form to an OL, which is an alcohol,
And your body,
and perceives and responds to that
The
like
same way.
it's a sugar.
Oh.
so your pancreas
it
responds to
didn't
it the same way
magically
that the
go
sugar.
away.
Yeah. So it takes the calories out from the sugar, but it doesn't take your body's over response or under response in insulin. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, anything that ends in OSE or OL generally isn't good for
You won't get the
An alcohol
calories,
or a
but your
sugar.
body will still think, and that's an excitatory receptor site, which means you'll continue to crave it and want more.
And I enjoy a good glass of wine just like anybody else, but I again in moderation. If I have a glass of wine every night, my nose tells me, unfortunately, it becomes a snot fest.
So we have did you have a question? And then we have
And then
another
somebody
thing that
opened
needs to be answered, and then the question over here.
I also have baking soda where you said it's very alkalizing, so long term, I can definitely see where that would be bad.
Yeah.
But in the infrequent use, so for the holiday or something,
Yeah.
is it
Oh, yeah,
better than an
yeah.
antacid?
So yes, so using the sodium bicarb, the baking soda, long-term issues. In the same way, I don't care if somebody takes a Tums because they ate some crap over Christmas or something. Like, who cares? You could do baking soda, would have the exact same effect and cost you way less, as long as you're not doing it as a daily thing. And I know
Or you're
people
not
do.
on a thin therapeutic margin. If you're just healthy and we have heartburn, then you're fine for a time.
Yeah.
Real quick, we need to answer the question that was here, that was originally here, which is, do you recommend the HCV in hot water? I usually put it in hot water. What do you say?
So I'll
Like lemon.
I'll go to Chinese medicine on that
Mhm.
one. The idea that warm things are better for our stomach rather than cold. That if cold contracts, and so if our stomach contracts, so we always say this is like a bowl of soup, our belly, and so we should keep it warm. And
So better than putting it right on our teeth straight to
yes,
dilute it in
to
water
do
would
it.
be an answer.
If you're like, no, but it makes me feel better. It cured these 37 things on me. I'd be like, yeah, in hot water, heck yeah.
Okay,
it's
and
fine.
then question.
Watch
over
your teeth though.
Rinse it when you're done.
Yes.
So we're in Germany, we have this, when your pH balance is out of balance because of whatever you have going on down there,
Mhm.
we do apple cider vinegar with warm water and baking soda.
Yep.
Does that still?
I
work for, like, when you
personally.
drink it?
So let me answer that a couple of
Right.
different ways because it's kind of relevant to all of it. So what she said was, if somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, have a yeast infection or something like that, vaginal yeast infection, that in Germany they would use things like baking soda, apple cider vinegar as a douche. Yeah. And so generally I don't recommend douching.
Just
Yep.
to fix your flora and fauna internally for the external problems.
yes,
Good
yes.
job.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah, yeah.
internally,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
as a douche.
Not as a douche.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I always say that is a
That's like a volcano. Like it's
yeah, frothing at the mouth. Yeah. So I don't generally recommend douching like it's a self-cleaning organ. But to drink it internally, people do that.
Remember, you guys voluntarily came here.
Suckers. So so it's really fascinating, and there's some variation to this. But if your blood is more than like a 0.5 off, you should be in the hospital because you're going to die. And so the idea that what we drink has this dramatic impact on our blood pH is not backed up by research or science. And what we do is we drink the lemon juice, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with lemon juice, by the way. And then we pee on a stick and we go, look, it did stuff. And there's no correlation to those two things. And so when we talk about our body's pH, we're usually referring to the blood, and your pH changes from one end of the big long tube to the other end of the big long tube. And so as the pH changes, we have part of our digestive system is our spit. So our chewing, we have a particular pH. And then in our stomach, we have a really acidic pH there. And then as it moves down the small and large intestine, that pH changes and it creates different good bacteria in there that helps to break down different parts of the now chewed up, slightly digested food as it moves down that big long tube until it comes out the other end. And that's a different pH than what went in the first end.
So keep
Thank
going.
you. So,
And I have a question for you when you're ready.
and I'll just put this out there. And I don't see it put on the internet anymore. Maybe they're, doing whatever. But they used to say the Nobel Peace Prize winner in science in 1932 was the guy who did the research on the whole pH and created and the book, blah, 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 blah. One of the things I yell at my herb students all the time, original sources. So just because I read it on the internet doesn't mean it's true. So go and say, all right, that's a guy. I Googled him. And he really did win a Nobel Peace Prize for medicine in 1932, I think it was. And so I went and read his research. It's all there for free, like especially from that. And he did do research on pH. And what he looked at was outside of a cell, like right here, he measured this micron difference of pH there versus the blood. And what it was more about was the Budwig diet that was very popular at the time, that actually was a German woman, that created this idea of the Budwig diet, which was about comparing the individual cells, healthy cells versus not healthy cells, that an unhealthy cell was in a state of fermentation and created a more literally right outside, like, that close to the cell was different. What was not what the rest of the body's fluid was different in a state of fermentation versus a state of respiration, which was a healthy cell. And it was the argument for high-fat diets, for cancer treatments, and some other things. And so it had nothing to do with pH in the body and what we ate. So always go back to original sources. Don't believe me or anybody else.
Okay, an online question was, would it help for a limited time if baking soda helped? Would that be indicative of an actual overproduction of acid or an underproduction? And my answer to them would be, it would help either condition for a limited time. And then I'll get you to speak about how to differ about it, kind of like taking the HCL and seeing it happen.
Yeah. And I would say, I would go back to the empty stomach. If you're getting acid, that's an overproduction of acid. If you take the baking soda, the sodium bicarb, it will neutralize that stomach acid. You'll have no pain. If you're getting the acid while you have food in your belly, then it probably isn't. What you have is literally the food's kind of sitting there rotting. And that's why you get that uncomfortable bloating and burning sensation. And it will give a relief of symptoms, but all the negative side effects. And it's not addressing the why. You're not supposed to have pain when you eat. And yes, if we overindulge, their body is going to punch you in the stomach. Sorry. And there is, and I'll throw it in now just because, oh my God. So
7:30.
there is another reason why we get some of the acid reflux, and what's called a hiatal hernia. And it kind of, we never think about it, but it's a hernia is usually what we see is like, part of your intestines pop out of your abdomen, you need surgery and stuff like that. And so a hiatal hernia is literally a protrusion of the top of your stomach through your diaphragm. And so your diaphragm is this dome shaped muscle that's right here at the bottom of your rib cage, kind of actually attaches at your low back. And it is the muscle of respiration. And sorry, here's my free stuff. Your shoulders are your muscles of desperation, and your diaphragm is your muscle of respiration. So if you're breathing like this, you're making massage therapists around the world rich, and they appreciate you. And reality, if you've ever watched a little baby breathe and put a baby on its back, its belly goes like this. That's using your diaphragm, which is not only necessary for good respiration, it also moves 2/3 of the lymphatic system and helps with your digestion. And if we get to it, we're going to talk about sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system also is one of the resets for that, to put you in a state of rest and digest. So your ability to do diaphragmatic or belly breathing, check our YouTube. There's a thing,
There's a
notification
video of Bob
thingies.
doing
Yeah.
it.
It's super simple. You don't have to count or hold or plug your nose or pick your
Nope.
nose or anything.
Good
It's
for
super
your
easy.
lymphatic system and your
Um,
endocrine system.
So what happens if you do heavy lifting, pregnancy, overweight, and this your core muscles are weak, which is most of us, then ultimately that stomach can protrude up through the diaphragm and cause acid reflux symptoms. And here's the craziest thing. Medical term, hiatal hernia, right? A protrusion. What's the treatment? PPIs, acid reducing herbs or medication, sorry. But it's not an overproduction of acid, it's a protrusion through your diaphragm.
So they don't fix it, they just fix the symptom.
And so that's
you need to have it
crazy.
fixed.
So somebody should say, how do I pull the top of my stomach out of my freaking diaphragm?
We teach you in class.
And so the short answer is chiropractors are
Mhm.
trained to do that.
Mhm.
You can go to a chiropractor, have them show you. It's super simple. Watch a video, whatever. Literally right here, xiphoid processed, ribs, little hangy downy bone there. You can, that's usually very tender, either right off to the side of it right there. You just go like that. While you're laying down with your knees bent, you can actually pull it down and retrain it yourself. It's literally that simple. And it'll go right back, especially if you're pregnant or or you're lifting heavy things again. And so you just got to keep practicing that until you train all of that to go back where it belongs. And so again, go to the doc, make sure that's what it is, that it's not an ulcer or a varicosity that's bursting. But literally, I always go, no, why? Somebody should be able to tell you why. And if we know why, we should know how to fix it, not suppress a symptom that has long-term, really creepy side effects.
Can I ask a really quick
Yeah.
question? So we're talking about Tums before, which
Yeah.
is calcium carbonate, then you were saying baking soda, which is calcium bicarbonate.
Yes.
Wouldn't you just take calcium carbonate instead of baking soda then, if you can just get it in small
If
form?
you just weren't taking
You could.
Tums, yeah.
Yeah, you could do.
Is it better than calcium bicarbonate?
Neither one of them is good.
They're both bad.
We shouldn't be doing, like, technically, we shouldn't be doing any of them.
Yeah. So
But it's a Band-Aid, so it will
So
stop
the
the
question
bleeding,
was
like,
about
Yeah.
calcium carbonate, so the bicarbonate. The calcium carbonate, it does not work as well for reducing acid. Doesn't work particularly well for building bones either. And when we talk about Tums, that's the calcium carbonate with, I think it has the sodium bicarb in there as well.
Oh, it does?
I won't swear to that. I think so. We can pour some vinegar on it and see what happens.
It'll bubble.
It'd be super fun.
It'll bubble slightly.
But both of those are really crappy sources of calcium. The bicarb does better reducing the pH, changing the acidity of your blood. And I've literally had, and sorry, I'm going to pick on you, small boned, a small frame. I've had way too many doctors. I thought that went out in the 50s. Say you need to take Tums multiple times a day for bone density.
Really?
Oh God, yes.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's
just
horrifying.
stupid. You don't know
Yeah.
anatomy and physiology because she's a different stature than someone else.
That is what is taught
That's
in the
ignorant.
medical
At least
system.
in my generation.
Yeah. But no,
that's-
I people way younger.
What, they think your bones were going to get bigger? Like, what is that? That's
It's your bone density.
I
and so
understand
the
that, but I'm
small-
saying
the small frame is at higher risk of osteoporosis. And the problem is what I said, like, no, too much calcium is dangerous. And we need to look at things like vitamin D and magnesium.
that's just
those
super
other,
ignorant. We come in different shapes and
those
sizes.
other building blocks for your bone density to ensure it, rather than just main veining some.
Believe it or not, I have had success osteopenia.
Yeah.
But I've had success keeping it at bay by just leafy greens.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. So she said
If you're
she had
digesting properly, that is all you need.
she
Dark
said
leafy greens, dinosaur kale, is amazing.
osteopenia, which is
Alfalfa.
pre-osteoporosis just by eating leafy greens, which dark green leafies, sesame seeds, broccoli are phenomenal sources of calcium. And ultimately when we see calcium in things like orange juice, that's fortified with what you said, calcium carbonate, which is the cheapest, least absorbable form that's more likely to cause calcifications and bone spurs than it is a benefit for your bones, unfortunately. Okay. We know what our next lecture is going to be, is osteoporosis.
On to the bloating.
All right, bloating. So
Do we want to clarify that everything that we just talked about was about stomach acid and trying to control things like heartburn, and now we're on to bloating.
yes,
So those
another
plants that we mentioned.
and those can go hand in hand and frequently do.
Mhm.
So bloating can come from literally low stomach acid because we have an accumulation of literally gas in there. It can come from really poor eating habits of, i.e., I come from a long line of people who don't chew their food, and so we're
It's
scarfing it like my
amazing.
dog, and so I'm ingesting a lot of air with my food, and so then we're like belching all over the place, and
And brother, dad, all done.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
just getting our.
yeah, you're lucky if you got your fingers
this
if you're sitting
happen?
at the dinner table with me. We eat so
Amazing.
fast, and the military did not help me in eating slower.
You
Let's
should
just
win
say,
a prize at it.
right? Put your face in your plate and suck was what the army told us to do. But that's the low stomach acid, the fast eating, not chewing our food. And I'll give you my
Us talking over the whole meal.
yes, one of my favorite ways to force myself to slow down: chopsticks. I suck at chopsticks, and not doing American chopsticks, not Chinese chopsticks. Because if the Chinese chopsticks is really, it's just a medium to shovel it into your face. They put the plate here and they go like this. That's how the proper way to use chopsticks. We're being all dainty and like, but that makes me eat slower because I'm really bad at it. So it is a way to force you to slow down. There's any number of different, counting to 40, chews, blah, blah, blah. But there's other reasons for that. One of which is if your gallbladder is not doing a good job, and your gallbladder is purpose is to help you to break down and digest your fats. So what we find is the bile secretions, your gallbladder can get tired, for lack of a better say. Your liver produces the bile, the gallbladder stores it, and sometimes the liver just doesn't do a good job. Sometimes we've had too much yummy food and it gets literally sludgy in your gallbladder. Or if you're really unlucky and have it takes it to the next level of inflammation, you can end up forming gallstones. So there are many ways to approach this. Eating bitter foods in general
Good job.
can be helpful. So radicchio, if I know it never looks like that when you see it spelt out, but it's this purple lettuce that's really, endives are really bitter. If you didn't know it, that's what a salad's supposed to taste like. We eat that at the front of the meal with these really bitter herbs in there to stimulate your bile secretion so you can eat that yummy cheeseburger or steak or something, or the skin off the chicken or whatever. Sorry, I just immediately went to the Henschen house. It was right outside. The best chicken ever in Germany.
Baba stationed in Germany.
Yeah, it's 3 fun years. So the bitter taste helps to stimulate bile secretions and kind of prepares your body for a meal, especially greasy meals. And whether it's a good fat or a bad fat, whether it's deep fried or even healthy fats like avocado, making sure that our gallbladder is functioning properly to help break down those fats is vital.
So when we go back to the original statement talking about the previous thing with the acid in the apple cider vinegar, all of our bitters we make being an apple cider vinegar, added value for that, as well as we're putting things in that we're going to even talk about now that would be stimulating the bile and getting the whole big long tube to know ahead of time, oh, we need to work, we need to do this thing. Now we're on our way to do it.
So one of the things I think Renee's already kind of hinted at it, the idea of digestive bitters. You may have heard of Swedish bitters, same damn thing, just one came from Sweden. And ultimately what that is either an alcohol or a vinegar extraction of a bunch of digestive herbs, some of which have to be bitter. And that we do those before meals. The trick is it's super easy to make. You could go to the grocery store and buy the herbs that you need for them. And, a lot of things like you'll see further down here, there's things like, oh, it's actually in this section,
Mhm.
citrus peel, like orange peel, tangerine peel, doesn't matter. Fennel,
I was gonna
fenugreek,
say
all
or
of,
perceived to be bitter,
Yeah.
even if it's not bitter.
so
to
these
us.
are things that are very easy for us to source. You can get fancier with it. There's an idea within herbal medicine that we get a little cranky about, and that's the idea of energetics, the idea of hot and cold, wet and dry, and deficient and excess. And so we talked about deficient and excess, low stomach acid, high stomach acid. The treatment, it's acid reflux is a symptom, but it has two manifestations that require very different treatments. Notice I didn't say a lot about high stomach acid because ultimately, A, it's super rare. And B, that might require that you do acid reflux meds while you figure out why that's happening. Very different from nourishing and substituting or supplementing with something like HCL. I'm adding something to a deficiency. The idea, we said moistening herbs, right? So we had this idea of mucilaginous, okra, licorice. These are moistening for something that's dry. And if we had, if I eat, too much yummy kombucha, I end up with this too much moisture. I have a snot fest going on. And so I need things that are more dry. So we can do wet or dry. And then hot and cold, I think we've all experienced those. If we have ginger tea, it's not spicy like cayenne pepper. It actually feels warm in your belly. And for people who are always like, I hate cold drinks, they hurt. I always have soup. I always have room temperature or warm water. Those people have a cold digestion. And that shows up in Ayurvedic medicine, the digestive fire, the agony. We have it in Chinese herbal medicine. We see it every traditional culture. Ice cream is never good for us. It's yummy. It's good for our ego or something. I don't know.
It's good for the soul.
But ultimately, the idea of cooked and warm things is good for the energetics of our digestion. But we've also all said in the middle of Florida in the summertime, watermelon is the best tasting thing in the entire world. And it doesn't even have to go in the ice box. We can actually just pull it right off the vine. I know nobody knows what an ice box is anymore. I lived on a sailboat for years. We actually had an ice box. We block ice, you put it in there. And so we could eat this watermelon. And when we eat it, it feels cold in our mouth, even though it's the same temperature of the air. And it's cold, it's refreshing, it cools our body off. And so this idea of hot, cold, wet, dry, deficient, excess sounds really exotic and bizarre and nonsensical, but the reality is it all makes sense when we start to think about it. And those subtleties, what allows us to make better choices in our herbs and have greater and greater success. And based on all of those symptoms that an individual has. And so some people have, their belly literally feels hot. They may be doing lots of spicy food, alcohol, things like that are all going to cause this to feel hot all the time. And so they're slamming ice drinks all day long. So if I want to make a digestive bitter for them,
Freezing cold, freezing cold, and went and got ice to put in my drink. Do I have to eat internally? Yes.
So for those folks who are trying to put out a fire, we want to use cooling bitter herbs, which are actually easier to find.
Yes.
And for somebody like me who might literally, if you touch my belly, it feels cold. And I hate cold drinks. I prefer warm drinks. My magic food is soup. I would eat soups and stews all day long and it would be the happiest thing. I love my warm digestive bitter. I call it coffee.
So it's fair to point out right now that if you were a normal person and not an herbalist and you went into a store like a Walgreens and said, I need a bitters, the traditional Swedish bitters is on the shelf and you can go back and get it in the digestive area and it's freezing cold and not right for almost all of us. And so it's something
we love spicy food in Florida.
Yeah, so it's something that being able to make your own or be able to walk in and ask for one of the ones that's more balanced, that's on an herbalist shelf is a thing that you should get. Like, just be aware of the ones in the stores are usually always too cold.
So, and we can explore, there's endless numbers of things. And we actually, there's nothing wrong with alcohol, but more and more people are not able or not willing to drink alcohol. And so I actually think the vinegars do better as a digestive bitter. Mm-hmm. If alcohol is okay, actually mixing the two. Alcohol is a better extractor of those herbs. But the vinegar does okay. And, you know, the alcohol has a longer shelf life, so it has real benefits that you could make a half gallon and have it forever.
A secondary benefit of the vinegar is that if you already are nutrient less because of your acid being off or bloating or stomach being off, that it's extracting from all of those plants its vitamins and its minerals. It's something that's its strong suit. So you're getting an extra multivitamin with all the plants that you're putting in there. It's taking all those vitamin minerals out of it. And so you're helping, you're feeding as well as helping to fix the gut at the same time.
So some of the things that we can use, fennel, if you've ever gone to one of the Indian restaurants, especially the buffets, and at the end of the buffet line, there's this little jar of a bunch of weird seeds. Those are all what we call carminatives. They're all digestives. And frequently there's a bitterness to them, not real intense, but there's a slight bitter. And so they have anise in there, they have fennel, sometimes there's fenugreek, I don't know, all kinds of other weird stuff. I'm sure I can't think of.
Amala.
So let's talk about a couple that I like to put in. So Renee was like, no, 3 herbs. And so I did 4, of course.
I was trying to like get you guys narrowed in.
This is the super short list, by the way. Like there's 50 herbs we could put in every one of these sections easily. So fennel is one of my favorite. Not everybody likes fennel. And so whether it's fennel seed or the fennel bulb, both can be used. I find it's really yummy to thinly slice some fennel. Get the bulb you can buy in the grocery store. Thinly slice that fennel and mix it in with your salad, where you also have some endive or radicchio in there. It's lovely in a crab salad. Sorry, I like to cook. Or we can use the fennel seeds and add those into our digestive bitter, or literally just eat them. They can be used at any time, and fennel is warming. It's specific for bloating and pain. It's helpful for spasm. Citrus peel, we prefer orange or tangerine peels. The Chinese use tangerine peel primarily, and I didn't even ask if any of y'all were Chinese medicine-y folks or acupuncturists or anything, but chen pea or ching pea are the two, and that's tangerine and bitter, not a bitter orange, bergamot. That in China, in the places where they grow oranges, they have a screen in the back of their house where they take the peels and they throw those up there to dry. And here's the weirdness: the older the tangerine peel, the better it's thought to be. And it's specific for pain and distension in the belly. And the best word in the world, good luck spelling this one, because you know they're going to ask. I don't know how to spell it. Borborygmus.
Oh Lord, baby Jesus.
That's what your stomach sounds like if you've got bloating. So that's the technically correct term, borborygmus. Took me years to be able to say that correctly, by the way. And so a noisy stomach, that's what it is. And tangerine and orange peel is great for it. It's so funny. I always say that the yummiest part of the orange, without a doubt, is the fruit. But it's because it's sugar water. What's not to like with a little zing to it, right? The healthiest part is the peel. That's where your bioflavonoids are, the all kinds of interesting things in there that are preventative to cancer, anti-inflammatory, antioxidants. They help the 2-stage liver detoxification. They help preserve glutathione. Blah, 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 blah. It's a good shit. So the reality is we throw that part away. Hopefully you at least throw it in the compost pile, even though it can kill your compost pile. Even the seeds have real health benefits in it. Yes.
How are you using the skin?
So you can actually, like, we think of the zest as what we use.
ways.
And so the zest has some of those volatile oils, but it also has it's like limonene or something that actually is very anti-cancer. But literally chopping it up into stuff, into your stir fries,
into your soups, into your salads, into your stir fries,
and so making sure the white part is in there as well. So not just the zest, but the entire peel. Yeah, cooking it. You don't want to cook it to death. You can make tea out of it. You can put it in your smoothies.
You can candy it with some cinnamon and some ginger.
She's getting fancy now.
Those are all carminatives. Yeah. Yes, you can absolutely dehydrate.
Yeah, dried is okay. And ultimately, it is very normal to put that into an infusion of tea. or even a
A
decoction.
bitters.
It can be, and into a bitter and preserved in the bitters.
So I want to tell you what's been
Perfect.
going on online because
Oh,
I've just
Lordy.
been babbling answers instead of getting you. And so we're talking about bitter foods that are over the counter and hope to counteract bloating. So they're actually asking for foods to consume. So I said the proverbial as you started talking about it, which was ironic and also funny. Orange peel, endive, romaine, grapefruit, fennel, roots like dandelion, chicory. Like I started going through things we'd see in the grocery store. Then talking about, not to get off topic, but isn't fennel good for spasming of the
Mhm.
stomach? And
Yes.
I answer absolutely
100%.
positively, as well as with chamomile and catnip, which is on your list.
They're coming.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny, there's things like, the orange peel is a little bitter. Tangerine peel is a little bitter. It's not bad, but it's not like, oh, I can't wait to eat that again. So combined into things, not that cookies are good for us.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
But-
And a ginger oatmeal cookie.
Fennel and fenugreek with orange or tangerine peel,
Cinnamon,
and maybe a little other, like all your pumpkin spices mixed in.
stem
If
ginger.
you don't know it, the fenugreek, which is a Middle Eastern herb, is also warming, slightly mucilaginous,
Tastes like maple syrup.
and tastes like maple syrup. So putting that into a cookie is
Mhm.
rocking. And
I do an herbal cooking class. You couldn't tell, right?
so there's lots of ways we can incorporate this as our pre-digestive biscuit, or we can
This is a
put this
nutrient
into
cookie.
yes.
Put boiling water on like slices of orange, will that get the properties out of the peel?
Not the orange, the peel only. The orange has, yeah,
So you eat the orange and then maybe put the peel in
Yeah.
some boiling water?
yeah, you could totally put the peel in boiling water and that'd be,
But let me clarify something. Wouldn't you rather she actually consume it?
either way is fine.
But
so
if
it-
you don't really like the taste.
Yeah,
then
it's a
maybe
little
little
bitter.
more, like, control if you just put it with water.
Yeah, if you like literally get the water to a boil,
Steep it.
throw the orange peel in, take it off of heat, put the lid on it, and let it sit for like 20 minutes or so, that would be just as good.
With
Yeah,
put ginger in it would help it, the taste?
ginger would be fine to put in there and is a great carminative, and wonderful for a warming digestive bitter.
Mhm.
So yeah, any of those are good. And I
You make
always
that in a Jello shot. Treat it like a
I wanna
Tom.
make
Yep, treat it like a Tums. Mhm.
trying to be healthy.
It
Uh,
is. We use the slippery elm to make the Jello part.
And I'm skipping one here, but any of your mints are also great as a tea.
Antispasmodic as well.
Yep, antispasmodic, specific for bloating, specific for the noisy stomach, the borborygmus. And so
Which, by the way,
peppermint,
I have the spelling of.
oh,
If
nice.
you-
Peppermint, spearmint, mint, field mint, the horse mint, that's the
St.
Florida
John's River
native.
mint.
And even things like lemon balm are technically a mint. The Melissa officinalis is a lemon mint
Catnip.
that also has, all of those also have antiviral properties. And so it's beneficial to steep those too long because then it gets bitter.
With the lid on always.
Yeah. But if you're like, yeah, but then it tastes like crap, it's okay to do a short steep of like 3 or 4 minutes and it's keeps that bright flavor in there, and then you can still drink it and get some of that anti-bloating properties from the mints. And so whichever mint you like, that's the right one. Calendula is an interesting one. I probably should have put that someplace else, but it also works for bloating and pain. Calendula is a beautiful orange, sometimes yellow flower that you can grow here in Florida.
It's in the back right now.
It is healing to tissues. It helps to generate tissue. It helps with pain and has, and this, I say it should have been in the next section because it is specific for ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease.
It has an affinity to tissues that have a large capillary value. So things that are internal, like our noses or our ears, things that will have a lot of blood to them. And so our gut, our intestines are that.
And calendula is a weird one. Usually flowers are super delicate. We want to do just a very gentle, warm infusion, a tea out of it. Calendula, there's some resins in there we want to bust out. Boil the crap out of that sucker. Don't be afraid of it. If you're doing a tincture, actually use as high a proof in alcohol as you can find.
Again, with the lid on if you're boiling or
Yeah.
concocting.
And so that's an odd thing, and it is also very bitter. And so it's not wrong to put that in digestive bitter as
So
well.
all things with resins help with physical and emotional trauma, and we're trying to use the hard part of the resin out of that flower to help repair trauma within our gut and our gut lining. And it's also resetting the flora and fauna as well. And so that's a good one.
The good bacteria.
Mhm.
And so now I'm going to say something that I'm not sure why, but most gastroenterologists don't seem to know about this. And it's kind of combining 1 and 2 together. There are many possible reasons why we can get bloating. Anything from low stomach acid to eating too fast, but also the good bacteria in our gut can get out of whack. And so we have beneficial bacteria that are all through our digestive system, even in our stomach. And when we take antibiotics, those get out of whack. It kills the good with the bad. Unfortunately, it's not selective. If you are ingesting essential oils, I don't care what the company told me, it will do all kinds of interesting things, one of which is kill the good bacteria in your gut, as well as the bad. And so we never recommend internal use of any essential oils. And I'm going to just generically say, for any reason, there's a very minor reason for a very short period of time, and it's like taking an antibiotic. So you could do either one. And one of the things that we sometimes see, anybody who's had long-term use, or even as an infant, if you had, you're the kid with the tubes in the ear, taking too many antibiotics, your gut's still jacked up. And there's a variety of ways to tell. You can go and do a poop test. If you have what's called a geographic tongue, where you have bare patches, where there's like, here's some coating, here's a bare patch. That basically is indicative of a jacked up gut flora. Or if you get reoccurring tongue ulcers or mouth ulcers, that can be a sign of a number of things, but is almost guaranteed at least a portion of that is your gut flora is out of whack. When you have low stomach acid or you take a lot of antibiotics, something called SIBO oftentimes happens. Small intestinal bowel overgrowth. There's another way to translate that, but small intestinal bowel overgrowth, that basically just below your stomach, you get candidiasis or some other kind of imbalance of your gut flora. The good bacteria in there have left the building. So that can cause a lot of bloating, pain, belching, and gas. And unfortunately, it's a pain in the ass to fix. You can use Western approaches or herbal approaches. I find actually both is really effective together rather than trying to do them separately. And it's oftentimes a year or 2 process to go through and correct SIBO. And you have to correct your diet and get rid of anything that feeds all of those mean little candida beasties. So SIBO should be one of those things. If you're like, well, I slowed down my eating, I did the digestive bitter, I eat a really good diet, why do I still have distension and pain for no obvious reason? You might explore that. The test for that, like sometimes I can literally look at somebody's tongue and go, yeah, you probably got SIBO. You can go get a test for that. The test is hard to find, unfortunately. You have to find a doctor who even knows what it is. Sometimes your insurance will pay for it, sometimes not. But basically you drink some sugar water and then blow into a tube. So it's not a creepy test, it's a yummy test. And based on the gases that come out when you blow will determine what imbalances you might have and will be indicative of the SIBO. All right, constipation, diarrhea.
Wait,
God,
any questions?
sorry, I always forget that part.
You guys okay? Okay, go. Hustle, hustle. You're doing great, Bob.
Awesome.
It's 8 o'clock.
Sweet.
Mhm.
So constipation and diarrhea, very, very common, unfortunately, and there are 1,001 causes to that. And kind of under that, we start to see the autoimmune disorders, ulcerative colitis, which is ulcerative, is telling us that you literally get ulcers in your usually large intestine, but it can be in the small intestine. Colitis is very similar, except it tends to be more in the small intestine, but can also show up in the large intestine. And IBS is fancy talk for irritable bowel syndrome, which means, we don't know why your gut's inflamed, but we're going to put a label on it that we can code. And too often I have people come in and go, I've got IBS. And I was like, which type? And they go, ooh. And unfortunately, that's the question that's not asked often enough. There are 3 types of IBS. There is diarrhea focused IBS, constipation focused IBS, and alternating between constipation and diarrhea, where it's popping back and forth, sometimes on a regular basis, sometimes not. And needless to say, the approach to that is going to be different in each case. And so we're looking at, if every once in a while you eat the wrong food and you get a little constipation or diarrhea, whatever, don't eat that food. And so it's when we start to see the chronic aspect of it and we don't have another cause, because there are, if you're not drinking enough water, that'll cause constipation. If you are Asian or African descent and you drink milk in any of its yummy forms, chances are you don't have the lactase digestive enzyme that will allow you to properly break down milk, and it will cause irritable bowel syndrome, usually diarrhea related, sometimes constipation. And so if you have anybody who is not of European descent, there is a small group of people are centered around Great Britain that are the lucky SOBs who can enjoy dairy all they want. The rest of us generally shouldn't have it.
Whenever you get a chance, I have a question.
You.
So it's a little bit back. So
That's okay.
what do you suggest is the most helpful thing to help cure SIBO or help with SIBO? No sugar.
No sugar,
No
carbohydrates.
carbohydrates or sugar.
And that's it.
and
And or fruit.
No fruit, no root vegetables, no carbs of any kind, only meat and vegetables.
I would say with SIBO, work with a practitioner, whether it's a naturopath, functional medicine doc, or crazy herbalist
and a really awesome
acupuncturist
bitters
who's familiar with it. Yeah, and the bitters
to
become.
restore the gut.
If you're already like, but I am an herbalist, don't treat yourself.
Don't treat yourself.
But
or family.
Guido Masse has some nice protocols that I think are published, or come see me because I know a lot about digestion.
Founder of a company. Bob, I think, has the head of, like, he should be the digestion king for sure. But Guido Masse, MASE, has a company called Urban Moonshine that is all bitters, all different kinds of bitters
Great
for
company.
different reasons. It's a great company. But he's also a wonderful practitioner, super smart,
Yeah.
super smart.
We copy all his formulas.
Well,
That's
he
what we
gave
use
them,
for you.
he gave them to me, and Bob tries to copy them off of me.
Yeah, SIBO's just not nice. I'm sorry for anybody who ends up with it. I'm unwilling to test to see.
So
if I
really,
do.
the most important thing is 0 sugar of any
Yeah.
kind.
Unfortunately, and that's just cruel and unusual.
No potatoes.
So when it comes to the constipation, diarrhea, I usually start to see whether there's a food sensitivity, not an allergy. Food sensitivities do not show up when you go to the allergist and they do all of the prick thingies and they, oh, look, you're allergic to grass. Food sensitivities won't show up like that. So the idea of gut permeability or leaky gut is another 3-hour lecture. But the reality is the food we like the most, we frequently develop a sensitivity over time, especially for people who have taken antibiotics, especially the stronger ones. If you take any kind of NSAID, anti-inflammatory, like Tylenol or ibuprofen on a fairly regular basis, that causes gut permeability issues. Or if you use an inhaler or any other type of ingested steroid or inhaled steroid, that frequently causes gut permeability issues, which leads to food sensitivities. So bummer. Most of us have it. And there's also, and I hate to say this, there's something creepy we do to our food here. Renee's the conspiracy freak. I'm a little conspiracy. But the reality is I love dairy. Dairy doesn't love me. I love wheat and gluten, and it also doesn't love me. I would be on the all pasta and cheese diet if I could. Here in the US, it stops me because of the pain and snot that it inflicts on me. When I go to Europe, when I go to South America, I can eat all the crap. I can drink all the wine and drink the beer. I can't do it here in the US. And whether it's GMOs, I literally don't know. And there's 1,000 things we could blame it on. But I don't know, it just means more travel opportunities
We
for
all
me.
know it's the
I'm here to tell you that every case of rheumatoid arthritis that I've ever seen is caused by food sensitivity. And that's a scary
You're
thought.
so definitive.
I have yet to have found one that, even if they've like had it for 30 years, and it doesn't mean people are willing to give up their cookies, but
At least you know.
at least they know. Like I had a woman, she was in her
It's
80s,
gonna cause a flare.
and at this point, her hands were permanently damaged. Her spine was permanently damaged. She was in unbelievable pain.
That's awful.
And she was such a trooper. Like she was working out. I am glad I was not her personal trainer, because like her hands were in claws. She would make him push her fingers over the bar so she could lift at 80 something years old. I was so impressed. And I was like, I cannot do that for you. I'm sorry. But the reality is she was like, oh yeah, that she was coming to see me for that. And she would go like, oh, I had cookies yesterday. I'm really in pain. It was gluten. And I'm going to say frequently it's gluten. It's occasionally dairy, occasionally corn, and every once in a while it's something really freaking obscure that you would never guess at, that you just got to figure it out. So I find a lot of our inflammatory gut issues are food sensitivities. Oh, okay. I was like, what crazy crap are you writing up there? A lot of our food sensitivities it's my running joke with our students. And I was like, what's your favorite food? It's that. What food do you hate? You totally despise. You need that twice as much. I'm usually right, and it's really irritating. There are really expensive tests, like $1,000, that you can get tested for every food and supplement and herb under the sun that will give you what you're sensitive to. It's a decent accuracy. And what I always like, I can order that test and any functionalmedicine.com and so forth. I always go, if it comes back, one of my favorite things is coffee. I have a thing for coffee. If it comes back and says you shouldn't have coffee, it's causing your pain and inflammation, would you stop?
No.
And if your answer is no, then why are you going to piss away $1,000? Because it is.
Mhm.
It might come up with some other stuff.
But at least you
But
know.
I guarantee it's at least that.
you know, and you can choose times to have it or choose to have better coffee because you're gonna
Right,
make yourself hurt
right.
because of it.
You should always buy better
So
coffee.
wouldn't that be better just to have cacao instead of coffee?
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Totally.
It's just not the same.
Or Wayusa, or yeah, but it's not the same.
I'll add cacao
I
to my
got,
coffee.
I have Dandy Blend out there. I have an herbal coffee supplement. Guess what? I ate coffee.
So,
Yeah. I don't drink coffee.
so
Anything but coffee.
I'm gonna say, like, if
Coffee's
you're
a neurotoxin.
so food sensitivities will cause inflammation of your gut. It may manifest as either diarrhea or constipation, just kind of depending literally on your energetics. And so if you're drinking enough water, you're eating vegetables occasionally, your poop should be normal. Wait, what's normal? It should be a brown
I was
log.
gonna say we have a color-coded chart for you to choose
Yes.
from, for real.
There is a brown, you should have a sinker that's a brown log with no undigested food.
So
Corn doesn't
upsetting.
count.
So upsetting.
If you see yesterday's salad or last week's salad or an hour ago's salad, if you see all kinds of other interesting things in there that you're not really sure what they are, you ain't pooping right. Yes.
What else to help with that? Now, the kicker, when you ever go travel to Europe, be aware, not anymore as much as back in the day, our toilets had a little step stool. Yes. So we were really, really cautious about our food. I don't know why. It's when my husband first came to the United States, from the United States to Germany, and he's like, "What in the world is this? Why am I like pooping on a pedestal?" Basically, and I'm like, "That's what we do. Like in order to see, are you okay?"
And they were selling that here for a while. What the heck was it called? I can't remember. Oh my God. Renee will remember. We never had one, but our friends had one. So they swore by it.
I mean, it's literally just like
yeah.
a regular toilet, but it has a little pedestal thing in it,
Yeah.
and then it goes down. So
Yeah,
the one flushes it down.
There's a cool poop stool you can order, but you can just get a footstool.
Talking about the basin.
No, the inside,
Oh, the actual
inside
basin.
toilet.
Yes.
The inside basin.
Ah,
And you
okay.
can see your bit of the
fall in the water, it falls
No,
on
it doesn't.
Ah,
fall in the
yes.
water, it has
So
a
you
little-
can see it
Okay, yes.
and inspect it.
So, you know, and if you want to know the variety of all the poop that exists in the world, go to a porta potty at a festival on the second day. See, y'all know what poop isn't supposed to look like. Sorry, be afraid if you're one of our students. So the reality is most people's poop doesn't follow that. And do, you know, 1 to 3 bowel movements
We
a
work
day
with festivals.
formed is normal. Anything other than that, there's an issue. Doesn't mean it's life threatening or anything, but there's something not right. And you know, if somebody's eating a very vegetable based diet, I would expect more frequent bowel movements, but it shouldn't be more than 3. So anything more than that is starting to move towards diarrhea, to include loose, include soft serve. Rabbit pellets are not a sign of healthy poop. That's actually usually a stress sign. If you're straining, if you're pooping every other day, that is not healthy. And I hate to say it, I have clients who pooped once every week to once every month. I don't know how they survived.
It's pretty upsetting.
And both children and adults in that case. And if that
That's because they're on this and you're like.
sometimes, yeah, I
No,
mean, so they might be on Miralax or something, but even that, like,
We've been on a run of small children that were born not pooping but once a week or even more, once every 2 weeks.
it's
And
unfortunately
the moms
common.
are doing everything right. We just been on a streak of it. The moms are doing everything right and they've changed their diet and they've taken out this and they've given them AAA and they've done all these things. And still, like, we're excited to get them to once a week. And the doctors are like, oh no, they're fine.
And in those cases, it's usually a food sensitivity.
Yes.
Literally, the kid's drinking water, is eating a vegetable. blah,
Literally
blah,
right
blah.
now we have
It's
them on
usually
like
food
just meat and vegetables and
So
nothing
there are
else. And
there are many things that can cause that. So making sure probiotics if they've been on antibiotics, or sorry, since you mentioned kids, or if they were a C-section.
yes, 100%
So your
re-inoculating.
initial inoculation,
Yep.
your first dose of good bacteria comes as the child passes through the vaginal canal. So every C-section baby, unless you had one sharp ass doctor who did a vaginal swab and did that on the
re-inoculation.
kid's mouth, that kid does not have good bacteria. And so that it can be as simple as that. And C-sections are super
So we're
common.
at 8:15. What are the herbs for this?
Stuff. So the starting point is always water, not soda, not juice, but water. Not adulterated, not pH altered water. And I know this is also horrifying, not RO water, not reverse osmosis water, unless you've added salt back in. Because if you strip all of this stuff and it's pure H2O, it is a molecule that likes to suck onto other stuff, like the minerals that are in your body, and it will steal those minerals. I've treated whole families that, I hate to say it, were actually selling them. And the whole family, they were spent tens of thousands of dollars on EMFs and functional medicine docs. I was like, do you put any salt back into your water? And they're like, what do you mean? We have the cleanest, most perfect water in the world. It's like, yeah, for your batteries. But the reality is, if you're doing RO water, there's nothing in there except H2O. It wants to bind to other stuff. So if you take sea salt, like the smallest little pinch, like if you taste the salt, you put too much in, but that will make for stable H2O molecules and it won't steal anything from you. So nothing wrong with the reverse osmosis as long as you put stuff back, or lemon juice or anything to create a more stable molecule with that. And I would say if you're doing RO, make sure you're using glassware and not plasticware, because then it's going to suck that stuff out of the plastic and that's creepy. Water, yes. The other thing, and I'm trying not to talk about supplements too often, but magnesium for constipation is phenomenal. Magnesium has many other uses, everything from sleep, muscle spasm, blood pressure, blood sugar, you name it. Magnesium has a benefit. Is the most common mineral deficiency that we have for both men and women. And there are 3 different forms of it. Well, there's more than that, but 3 common forms, I should
I
say.
went to Bob and Renee and I got it.
Oh, you got the Bristol scale poop. I have a gentleman.
Everyone got one.
I have a gentleman who comes in. He was familiar with the Bristol scale long
There
before
you
he
go.
saw me, and he has a daily poop chart that he writes
Oh,
what
good
number it is. It's awesome. I love him for that, and I can always trace it back to some behavior when all of a sudden it's more constipated. And so we're like, stop doing that. It's causing that. Magnesium oxide primarily causes loose stool. So if you have constipation and you need to poop fast, magnesium oxide, it is also the cheapest, least absorbable form of magnesium. It does not affect sleep, stress, blood sugar, blood pressure, as well as other ones. Magnesium citrate, they've slapped that citric acid molecule onto there and makes it more absorbable. So that one also works for constipation, but seems to help all those other things as well, like blood sugar and blood pressure, and stress and sleep. For those of us who have blood pressure, blood sugar, stress issues, but are tending towards normal to loose stools, we can use magnesium glycinate. That's the most expensive, unfortunately, most absorbable, and has the least effect on the bowels, but all positive benefits on other stuff. I do not recommend Miralax and some of the other ones, although they work for constipation. They can become addictive. I know some MDs who are recommending that all of their patients over the age of 65 use Miralax every day to ensure that they have healthy poop. And I would say a healthy daily poop is important, but just because you could put a fire hose in your butt doesn't mean you should.
Ta-da!
So making sure you have fiber in your diet, and that's like the over-the-counter Walgreens, Walmart, whatever, fiber supplements are fine. I would rather you ate vegetables. I will tell you my favorite story. I had a woman who
I was
came to
gonna
me
say,
for
say the thing,
constipation.
yeah. This is great.
And she was like, I don't understand. I'm doing everything right. I'm juicing every day. I eat this diet, blah, blah, blah. And she's doing all this great stuff. And she was like, I was like, so are you doing like throwing a bunch of vegetables in the blender and spinning them around, or are you doing a juicer? She's like, I'm doing a juicer, and it spits all the fiber out on the outside. She's like, yeah, give it to my dog. I
How's
was
your
like,
dog pooping?
I bet you your dog has the best poop and the best coat and the best digestive system. She was like, yeah, he really does. I was like, she was going out and buying this fiber supplement and eating that to fix her constipation while she gave all the fiber that was fresh off the
So
vegetable to her
everybody-
dog.
The
So,
best way to eat an apple is to chew it and to eat it.
so an
Like,
insoluble fiber is important for our cholesterol levels, our blood pressure levels, our healthy gut flora, those good bacteria. We need insoluble fiber, and ultimately it is part of the bulking agent that allows us to have healthy poop. So eat your veggies. You don't need to juice. So that's
plants that help this.
yeah. So let's talk the other end. If you're tending towards loose stools or diarrhea, probiotics are usually, and excuse me, let me back that up. For chronic loose stools and diarrhea, acute diarrhea, diarrhea may be food poisoning or something like that, in which case, let it come out.
How do
Your
you
body
tell
is
the
purging.
difference, Bob?
The smell and the burn. So if it's smelly and burny and crampy, you probably shouldn't have eaten from that street vendor.
Yeah.
The street sushi usually isn't a good choice.
But if it's just flying out and it's not hot,
If the poop is falling out and it's coming out multiple times a day and has for the last 15 years, it could be an adverse reaction to
you
antibiotics.
were a 6 or a 7 on your scale.
You may be eating too much cold drinks, food sensitivity, and so forth. So if there is cramping, hops, not beer, hops, the plant, the thing that makes the beer yummy bitter, is specific for stress-induced diarrhea as well as cramping spasmodic diarrhea. Make sure you get it from a good company. Too often, the leftovers from the beer industry, which removes the part that you want, which is kind of like the pollen inside the hops pod.
You want me to go get some? I got it.
Yeah, you can show it off. So if it's just that outer covering, it doesn't do anything and it doesn't taste like anything. hops should be nasty beer.
It should smell like stinky.
It's also great for anxiety. One of Renee's teachers, when she goes out and harvests the hops, and she's a Cherokee woman who also happens to be a naturopathic physician up north, that she's out and she would be texting Renee and like, hey, I'm going out to get some hops. You need any? And she actually, the hurricane hops there when the hurricane came and we were out powder for a week. Everybody was stressed out. So she's literally, by the end of the day, her typing is slurred and she's like, have a hoppy day. So it's this very bright, shiny, little giddy, laughy kind of things that good hops should create, but specific for that nervous or spastic diarrhea. The other thing is probiotics generically are beneficial. Some people, if they do a really good multi-strain probiotic, that's too strong, it will cause diarrhea. And so there's a die off of the wrong stuff. As it restabilizes, it will cause almost flu-like symptoms, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea sometimes. So if you've never used a probiotic before and you're like, this one's really good, it's expensive, sometimes they are. I would actually do 1 capsule every other day to start so you don't cause diarrhea. But Saccharomyces, which is a leftover from the breweries, it's brewer's yeast basically. Saccharomyces is specific for chronic loose stools due to a gut overgrowth. The other thing that can work almost as an emergency is blackberry root. And so it's so funny, all in the same plant family. We have red raspberry, which is for lax tissues. It tightens up tissues. So we use it as for women who are pregnant to get them ready for giving birth so that the uterine wall is nice and strong. It has good muscle contractions. In the same way, we can use red raspberry to slowly tone the large intestines and the colon so that it can hold the poop in. But if we're like, no, I want to stop it, you use the root. That one is sticking a plug in your butt to stop the poop from flowing.
You're elegant.
I know, I'm so elegant. The Florida variety of that is dewberry, which you can use the leaf in the same way we use red raspberry leaf, or we can use the root to stop the poop. There you go. Remember that little fun phrase.
I'm gonna write it on the board for you.
Okay.
Not the phrase.
No. There's a Chinese herb that is commonly used in cooking called lianzi, which is lotus seed. And that can be cooked up by itself, just boiled. And it doesn't get like soft like rice or a lentil, but you can cook it and eat it and drink the liquid, or you can throw it into your rice. So if you take the lotus seeds, and you can buy them at the clinic, but you can also go to an Asian market and so forth and get them, and you can go harvest some lotus seeds if you're into it. But if you take those and throw those into your rice, the water, and boil them for about 30 minutes before you add your rice in, it can actually be kind of like having a lentil in there, and has some really good benefits to it, but specific for long-term loose stools. Kidney qi deficiency for those of you who are into that. The other one that can work kind of short-term is the peel of a pomegranate. And that's something you can get, and that's did I put the Chinese name on there? Yeah, Shilupi. So pomegranate is something you buy in the grocery store that you can find in a lot of countries, and making a very strong tea out of that will literally tighten everything up.
Is that pith and peel, is it slightly bitter or is it
A
not?
little bitter, but not too horrid.
Just curious.
Yeah. So those are good ways to stop it, but it's important that we understand, why are you getting diarrhea?
Because you want it to come out. And as a general sense,
Yeah.
Americans have a problem with purging either way.
Mm-hmm.
Like most countries, if they thought they had a bellyache and they're gonna puke, they tried to instigate it, where we like hold on to it like the Grim Reaper in death. Like,
And I hate to say
let
it,
it go.
you know, I'm surprised nobody's yelled at me for this, but like colon cleanses and stuff like that, excessive pooping, like doing purgatives, not always my idea of a good time.
Especially if you're deficient, it makes you tired and exhausted.
And what frequently comes up is, what about colonics? And so there's nothing wrong with colonics. The problem is when we do them every day.
Or when we're reliant on them in
Yeah,
some way.
and then we become reliant. So going to a professional massage therapist can do an extra bit of training in order to learn how to do colonics. Other people do it with specialized training. But we see, I always go back to tradition. When we look at traditional cultures, they tend to do things on a seasonal basis. So you want to do a cleanse and you want to do something like that, eat gently or eat super simple. And if you're into colonics, then you do that like 4 times a year.
They do spring cleaning, literally.
Yeah. And so to do it every day or every week, you're actually going to cause more harm than good.
And those are all cultures that are eating indigenously and eating from the earth, so that they're more likely to have parasites as a group because they're eating the same diets. And that's why they would make sure they had a good gut check after a long winter when they were eating less fresh food and stuff that had sat. And so that seems like a very illogical reason to think that they need to
Can't believe I'm actually going to get through all this shit.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't
Yes, you
think
got a
that you
question.
are. It's 8:28.
Like coffee and
Yeah, it's so funny. Coffee enemas, I forget whether Royal Lee or anybody, it might have been Kellogg even started some of that.
That doesn't surprise me, Kellogg. Yeah.
I prefer drinking my stimulants.
Like
So there is absorption through the gut. And so if you're doing a coffee enema and you feel good, it's because you just got a good shot of caffeine. It's way more fun to do it this way. And it is a stimulant laxative. And so it will move the poop. It's also an irritant. And I know it's a treatment for cancer in some camps. I've treated way too much cancer. I have way too many cancer patients right now. I've never recommended that.
They're depleted in all aspects. Yes, what is your question?
So, what is better to use? Just regular roasted coffee or just the green bean? What is not?
For an enema or for, I literally would say neither.
We wouldn't tell you to.
I would say
tell you
make
to
a good
stop
cup of
doing
coffee.
that.
I
Yeah.
believe it's usually a cold pressed roasted bean, but I won't swear to that. But cold pressed, not brewed.
Yeah.
Don't take your leftover coffee and stick it up your butt. That's not a good time. Make some cookies or something.
All right, we're at 8:28, Bob.
All right. So probably the most common, I've traumatized you with all this crap. And probably the most common problem though is stress. And that will screw up your digestion way more than McDonald's drive-through, probably, as long as you don't do it every day. So when we talk about the role of stress, we were like, how does that have anything to do with our digestive system? We can go back, I hate to say, go back to this darn science. I'm all about some energetic stuff. Like I will preach that from the rooftop, but it can't do it in 2 hours. So when we look at the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system, this is our fight or flight response. And so we always talk about sympathetic, which is fight or flight. It's fight, flight, or freeze, and so the saber-toothed tiger is chasing us down and we need to either be able to run the fastest 100-yard dash, or we got to fight that sucker and make a cool necklace out of it. And the reality is what we don't talk about is the other end of that. And that's the parasympathetic nervous system. And so when we come up with a cool phrase for that, it's rest, relax, digest, respiration, heart rate, reproduce, all the R things is our resting state. And the problem is there aren't any more saber-toothed tigers. And so we're not wrestling a bear. We're not fighting the saber-toothed tiger. It's 24 hours a day. We have lots of little tiny saber-toothed tigers. It's called bills and school and work and the car and all of these things that need to happen. The internet, politics, those are a bunch of saber-toothed tigers that chip away at us that we never escape. And those stresses seem to be cumulative and we get stuck in this sympathetic, shitty place, literally. And we never learn to go into that other rest, parasympathetic state. And so we're breathing like this, and we're not breathing like this, that we're constantly looking over our shoulder. We're in a state of anxiety because we're waiting for that other tiger to come chasing after us. So without a doubt, this is causing all three of our IBS types. They are causing some of our acid reflux. They are causing, if we're sitting there holding our shit together and tightening up our ab and we're popping our top of our stomach through our diaphragm, so it might be causing the hiatal hernia. Stress, and this is not well understood why, but stress will cause ulcers. And so many of our digestive issues are, and I hate to say it, it makes us do bad things like ice cream. Yummy as it may be, the gallon of Haagen-Dazs when we're stressed out is not helpful. Maybe for the moment, but long-term that's not. And so we go and drink alcohol. We get all the foods that are our comfort foods that literally destroy our digestive system. And so whether it's our choices that we make, our poor choices that we make, or the actual physiological sympathetic disruption that it causes to our digestive system, or our ability to move food through our intestines and cause it either to be extra spasmodic or not spasming properly. And it's always one of the most interesting things. We talk about the gut brain, blah, blah, blah. Largest collection of nerve endings, second largest collection of nerve endings is in our gut. 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, and it's responsible for peristalsis, fancy talk for squishing the poop through our intestines, the food through. So sometimes the treatment for IBS is antidepressants. It's not because you're depressed, it's because that chemical that it's interacting with that happens to also affect our mood is also affecting our digestion.
What do you think about that?
I don't like SSRIs, but it's not wrong. Maybe in the short term, as we need to get our shit together. Sorry, it's way too easy.
Okay.
So I would prefer that we use some of our digestive nervines.
Kind of why I was asking.
Yes.
Mhm.
So hence
Because
the
I think
herbs that I
that's a
chose there.
Terrible
Um,
choice.
There, yeah, I'm not a fan. So there are behaviors that we can do to create, when we talk about parasympathetic nervous system, we talk about the vagal tone. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It goes from the bottom of our skull all the way down to our toes, and has lots of cool branches all over the place. Interestingly enough, it's the vagus nerve that is responsible for hiccups. Go figure. I learned that in high school from my English teacher. It's freakish. And you can stimulate your vagus or reset your vagus nerve actually by pressing a little slot behind your ears that will stop your hiccups. It's a Chinese acupuncture point. And it's a branch of the vagus nerve that you're hitting. Yay. Sorry. Sanjiao 17. You can Google that and see exactly what I'm talking about. Type in Sanjiao. Nobody knows what the hell I just said. So we can do the belly breathing I talked about earlier, is a way to exercise and strengthen your vagal tone so that you can get in that parasympathetic state. Singing, specific, because that oftentimes utilizes the strength of your diaphragm, like we are sing from your diaphragm, right? And so the act of singing or chanting, i.e. Om Mani Padme Om, Hail Mary, full of grace, all of these things that we intonate in a variety, choose your religion, they all do some sort of chanting. All of those actually create a state of calm and get you in a parasympathetic state where you can rest, relax, and digest. And so I don't care what funny words come out of your mouth. If you're doing it in a chanting or ritual kind of way, it will have benefit and will strengthen your ability to take control of the rest state, that parasympathetic state. And I'm not a big fan of the last one, which is cold water in the face or a cold splash, but that does seem to kind of like smacking the side of the TV. Sorry, nobody does that anymore. Everybody's got
Restart
cable.
the
It
parasympathetic.
literally will shock you back into your parasympathetic state. And I will spare us all of the 4 billion examples we have.
What are the herbs that will do that?
So we have many digestive herbs that also are what we call nervines, i.e. things that help with frazzled nerves.
I was looking at this and it's like, yes,
You like my choices?
Yeah.
Okay. And I've tried to make sure there was always a Florida herb in there.
they're so good.
So blue vervain is one you don't see in here very often, So we see that either at the kava bars, but it's for really uptight people, think type A, but where if you change their schedule, they get a little irate and controlling, or they're very task oriented, and anything that throws them off that really upsets them. And they will frequently have acid reflux or burning or hiatal hernias. And so all of that frazzled nerve, that intensity of focus, which can have some benefits, but when it shows up in their digestion, the blue vervain is phenomenal. And it should be the American blue vervain, not the European vervain.
I got a little bit to say about this.
The American one is stronger. The European one does okay.
So blue vervain in particular is the classification of person that when you get sick or you get hurt or you get tired because you're frazzled and upset, you get mad at yourself. That you're like mad at your body for quitting, or you're angry because you're so tired, you're angry because you can't do the goal that you wish to accomplish. That's a very precise thing, in that lots of people when they're tired, they're like, oh, I just feel tired, I'm going to go to sleep, instead of being mad that you can't complete that task. And so it's just something to think about. It's an ally of yours.
Chamomile is just a yes for every one of these issues. Chamomile is the most boring herb. You can get it at Publix. You can get it at, at 7-Eleven. You can find chamomile, and a good chamomile should almost have a fruity smell to it. German, Egyptian, I don't care. They're all great. I like the German one better.
We do.
Yeah, it's stronger. It is relaxing. It is a digestive. It helps with nausea and vomiting, bloating, and intestinal spasm. It will help with sleep, and it is its strongest when it tastes the shittiest. So we had
you gotta make it brown.
So
and bitter
if you
enough.
want a gentle cup of tea
cup
that
of
you're
tea.
going to enjoy after your meal, you take your little teaspoon of chamomile and you put it in the hot water for 3 to 5 minutes, and then you take it out, and it will be sweet and fruity and feel lovely in your belly. If you want to be knocked unconscious and stop intestinal spasm, if you want it to work on chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, where digestion has a role in it, you take a handful of good chamomile, you throw that in a French press, you pour hot water on it, then you go to work for the day. For reals.
Disgusting.
And then 12 hours later, you strain this resinous, bitter, nasty crap out, and you drink a cup of that, you'd better set an alarm clock.
I'm giving you a dose, not a shit ton. I'm giving you an actual dose. I'm doing that.
It is a phenomenal herb that is strong for sleep, intestinal spasm, pain, bloating. That's all I can think of. Yeah.
How about Pragos
What is it?
for pregnant women?
It can be helpful for morning sickness when ginger pisses them off.
No, well, besides the first trimester, but there's no side effects, they can just.
You might not do the shit ton. You might do a little bit less and maybe not as
I will.
aggressive, but it's generally would be fine. First trimester, we tend to use catnip for the nausea and vomiting. And if they tend towards heat, then we use the catnip. If they tend towards cold, we use ginger. But chamomile is okay in not a overwhelming dosing. Yeah.
There is no wise woman practice, premium practice, folk herbalist that would ever tell a pregnant lady not to have chamomile.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, that's just,
Mhm.
wanted to confirm.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, in anybody who has a serious medical
If
condition,
somebody's
which although
struggling,
pregnancy
if
is
we're
a
losing
normal thing,
pregnancies, if we're dehydrated,
yeah, it's
come talk to me
important
about it. I'll
to
help.
work with somebody, or at least do your
Catnip
homework really well.
is
Is a
super
mint.
super efficient and will do its job and not have any side effects.
So
What about the blue vervain? Is it a tea or tincture?
as a tea is fine. You can buy capsules, you can do tinctures. The right way to take the herbs is the ones that you'll take.
Yes, but please, everybody be aware that if you're coming to that for a digestion reason, buying a capsule probably means you're not going to get it because your digestion's not working.
I always prefer a tea
Yeah.
tea or a decoction
It's
where you
helping
boil the
break it
crap out
forward
of
and
it.
make it more bioaccessible for you.
more affordable too? than
Yeah.
seeds?
Raws are more affordable.
Yeah,
oats, yeah.
usually are.
Less processing.
And I've got time. We've got two good stories for chamomile.
8:42.
Yeah, we got this.
You're
Piece of
you're
cake.
15 minutes over right
What-
now.
No, it said till 9.
Okay.
I looked.
All right.
I don't know why it said till 9, but whatever. So one of our friends, Chanchal, she
Cabrera.
is an herbalist who she kind of does the circuit. She teaches a lot. She travels literally all over the world and has some wonderful books. And she has chronic fatigue. She wrote the book on chronic fatigue syndrome. And when you're traveling to strange hotels, you're keeping weird hours, weird smells, chemical sensitivities is common, goes along with that issue. And so she's the one who literally turned us on to this idea of the chamomile. She was like, no, we got to do the blackout curtains. The second I get into my hotel room, she literally has a pound of chamomile she carries so that however many days she's there, she's always got a handful she throws into a French press. And she was like, it's the only reason she can actually do what she does. She could not travel as extensively as she does if it wasn't for chamomile allowing her to literally survive. The other part was our friend and had ovarian cancer. Will spare you the details, but
You want me to do it?
go for it, but do it fast.
So we specialize in cancer care and critical care, and we had a friend who had great distress and had 10 liters of cancerous fluid spill out into their gut, and ended up in Colorado, where another friend who is extremely caring and rich, it counts,
And likes good food.
and likes good food,
And good weed.
was taking care of them. So nothing but nurses, good food, and good weed for 6 weeks during the recovery of the surgery. And on the night that they came home, called me hysterical, literally could not understand them, hyperventilating, upset, because worst bellyache of their lives. And you can imagine if you just had gut surgery for cancer, that you would really be upset about a traumatizing stomachache.
And he had taken some of our classes, so he knew some basic herbalism. That's why he got
And
that
they
done.
used to live together, so I knew there was something in the house. I'm like, what's in the house? And they're like, there's some really old chamomile tea. So after going through the questioning of emergency, like, are you pooping? Are you peeing? Is stuff coming out? Do you have a fever? Said, take every single tea bag you have, mash it into the cup, make it fit, fill it up, put a lid on it, wait as long as possible, like minimum 30 minutes, drink it. And if in an hour something doesn't happen, I'll take you to the hospital myself. I'll make sure that I'll stay with you. And so I didn't hear from them for 18 hours.
We were like, we're sure he was
They're
dead.
either dead or they're okay. And got the phone call. Yeah, I'm fine. No problem. And that's it. And I was like, oh my gosh,
They
you
slept for
totally
16,
rolled
18
up
hours.
on the plane and went like right to the bar and had like pizza and beer after
Totally.
probably being on a vegan diet with all the pot that he wanted, like being completely in the midst of everything that is caring and good. Got home and acted like a regular dude and went to see the friends and ate anything he wanted and completely blew up. But the point is 18 hours from some crappy old chamomile on the back of the yeah, and 100% it was the nervous system and the anxiety and the stress from what he just gone
and
through.
crappy food.
Well, yes, but I'm saying
So
the act of it perpetuating it and
lemon balm.
spasming. Was there a hand up?
Oh, sorry.
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you take too much? Is there anything that's too much chamomile?
No, unless you're in the midst of driving cross country in the dark.
Yeah, like don't
Yeah.
operate heavy machinery on that dosing
Or
level.
if you're allergic to it,
Yeah.
which is
And
rare.
people, flowers, aster family.
Yeah, but
flowers,
it's
people-
rare. And how you would tell is you would just rub it on your arm and wait, and if you came up with a welt, choose another
Yeah.
plant. Yeah.
So lemon balm is a type of mint. So we could put this up where we talked about the mints in the bloating section, but lemon balm is kind of unique because it's also a nervine. So this is it's helps with stress without being sedating. So you can still operate heavy machinery after enjoying lemon balm. It's also antiviral, so we specifically use it for the herpes virus. And so the herpes virus is more than just oral and genital herpes. It's everything from shingles to
Mono.
yes,
Epstein-Barr.
mono and whatever the other one is.
Epstein-Barr.
Thank you, Epstein-Barr. All of those, there's actually like 9 or 10 different types of herpes virus. And so it's an interesting thing. 1 in 4 people have either oral or genital herpes. Forget all this shit, all the chicken pox and
Please, people do not have a stigma around that. That's a virus. It's nothing.
I mention this specifically because outbreaks are caused by generally two things. Once you've got it, it's very hard to get rid of it. So stress causes a trigger for outbreaks. The other thing is certain foods. Those foods that are high in L-arginine, which is an amino acid, and most bodybuilding, sports drink, and energy drinks have high amounts of L-arginine in them because it acts kind of like a stimulant, and not enough L-lysine. So you find a lot of the over-the-counter, they have the lipstick that has L-lysine is specific for fever blisters, i.e. herpes. But the lemon balm helps to reduce the stress related outbreaks, but it also reduces the ability of the herpes virus to replicate, to reproduce. So if you pay attention to diets, hence the reason it's in this list, and you drink this as a regular daily tea if you want, there's nothing wrong with that. It can help reduce or eliminate outbreaks. You still got herpes, but you can reduce the outbreaks, which are, from what I understand, not a good time. It can also be used topically for any kind of outbreaks, whether it be shingles or herpes 1 or 2.
So any virus in your body is helped, and we
Yeah.
use this as an herbal antiviral for any virus and anything that hides on the nervous system that is an invader.
So oats, we can see oats in a couple of different forms. Oatmeal is oats. We can use oat straw, which is the leaves, which is a little bit stronger, to oat tops, which is the aerial parts, and to milky oats, which is it's a very narrow window. When you harvest it, when you pinch it, it literally spits out a little bit of milky substance. And so all of those versions, from the oats being the least effective to the milky oats being the most effective, is specific for frazzled nerves. It's also great because it's high in fiber, it's high in minerals, it helps to normalize the digestion and the nerve function in the body.
And they're considered to be restorative and something that's reparative.
So it's moistening, nourishing, frazzled nerves. And I use that term rather than something fancier because it's covers way more, which is what oats covers. And so, yay, have a bowl of oatmeal. It's good for you. But oat straw is easier to do as a tea long term, or it can be added into your digestive bitter. It's very high in minerals. So those, putting that in for its mineral content is helpful. When we start to look at the oat tops and the milky oats, when we start to look at the myelin sheath, which is kind of the insulation of the nerves, it is specific for the repair of that, i.e. MS.
And it's important that you recognize it in yourself. If you were a child who got up and had to do a speech in class or had to tell about a book report and got sick to your stomach, or you got so nervous that before you left for school that day, you were in the bathroom, or you are that person. You are the person that you would benefit from all of these plants, like the ones that we're talking about right now. You are the one that internally checks your gut instinct, internally manifests this nerve situation in your stomach.
So and actually I'm now growing blue vervain here, even though it grows like up north. I've had it going for about 8 months now and been able to propagate it, which I'm super excited about. We even have a little bit out here. Yeah, we've got it here, but we've got it dried in the clinic. Chamomile, again, it's a pain in the butt to grow it, but you can. It's neither of those are native. Lemon balm is easy to grow, but it needs part to no sun, but dappled light or shade, and it needs more moisture and richer soil. Oats, I guess you could. I haven't tried yet.
No.
But let's get to the last one. Wood betony is actually a European herb. And there's an old 15th, 16th century adage to sell your coat and buy betony. And that this was more important than your winter coat. That it had so much benefit, just overall, a tropo-restorative, whatever. It helped normalize every system of the body. It was specific as a nervine to help with stress. And to help to normalize the digestive system, which I'm going to guess in 1600s was an occasional issue, since clean water was kind of a thing that they didn't have. So although you can limp along wood betony here, a Florida native plant is Florida betony, Stachys floridata, also known as rattlesnake root, which we use for the exact same purposes.
And find it to be superior.
Yeah. Yeah, and all parts of it can be used. The root, the rattlesnake rattle, it looks like a white lumpy radish, if you will. It's kind of sweet and crunchy, is more nourishment, and I find more an adaptogen along the lines of a mild ginseng, where the aerial parts and the long thin roots, more the nervine that are helping with the hyperstimulated nerve, i.e. overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system.
I have something to say about this real quick. More than any of
That
the
I'm awesome because I did it with 5 minutes to spare.
high five. I was shooting for 8:30. More than any of the other plants, these five that
Yeah.
you just heard are restorative. They're fixing a problem. They're not stopping a symptom. That these ones will actually fix what's going on internally. And some of the other ones will fix as well as help symptoms, but this is literally going to fix this issue in you. So if you've grown up with this issue of having bubble guts when you get nervous, that it's going to help your nervous system fix, and the symptom is the bubble guts. And so it's something important to understand that this is just something that should be in your
And
life.
needless to say, there's 100 other potential digestive issues, and I kind of got at the biggest, boldest categories. Digestive issues can be serious, especially when they're chronic. They lead to anything from nutritional deficiencies to scary ass stuff. And so use Western medicine, use herbalists, use functional medicine docs to figure out what's going on. And ultimately, the herbs that we listed here are not big scary herbs. There's plenty of big scary herbs that have some
Most
major.
of these are food.
Yeah,
Mhm.
these are generally safe, and you just need to do your own research. Start small and see whether they're safe, or just come see one of us.
Mhm.
And I'll do the selfless plugs. Obviously, Renee said in the beginning that, hey, we're practitioners. So, please do make an appointment. We also have a student clinic. So I know we got a bunch of our students in here. So our senior Chinese herbal students, as well as our Western herbal students, are practicing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights with our supervision. And it's only $10 for a consult. So like, by the time you bought all of these supplements and figured out which one was right, we could tell you.
For $10, yeah.
It's a better way to go. In the same sense, I'd like to think I'm a little bit better than my students. I've been doing this for over 25 years at this point, and certainly understand it because I've dealt with my own digestive issues over the years. And the temptations of yummy food. But all of this, people oftentimes do prefer doing their own homework and research and trying to figure it out, and that's okay. And this is hopefully a good starting point for all of this. If you don't know it, we do free classes like this. We do not free classes on Thursday nights that tend to be a little bit more spiritual, that Renee primarily teaches, that rock. And then we do weekend classes that are Western Herb 101 all the way through practitioner, 2 years to include clinical practice. The Chinese herb program where I beat diagnostics, and I have a running joke that I've decided to start calling it like acupuncture prep school, because all of my people who do decide to go into acupuncture school kick ass. We do also standalone classes like this weekend, like the flower essences, which is a type of homeopathy that primarily deals with mental emotional disorders. That's actually, you can either do one weekend, this one, or you can do all 3 weekends, which moves all the way to the practitioner level and certification. And Fridays, last Friday of every month, we've started doing a new thing, which is open forum, where it's like, just quiz Bob.
It's a free
You can quiz
question and
Renee
answer.
too,
We're both on, but I'm usually moderating.
Yeah.
And it could be about anything.
And so we get people from all over the world, literally, as well as practitioners to people who are just like, I don't know, what's an herb?
All right.
So that's very
take a
entertaining.
breath. Online, give them a chance to catch us. We're on a delay. Online or in the audience, do you have any questions about anything that Bob said or did, or something other than that? Yes.
With all these herbs here,
Mhm.
any interaction with prescription medication?
There's a
Like
potential.
or-
I need to teach my herb drug interaction
I'm
class
looking
again.
at blue vervain is in hops are sedative enough that if you were taking another sedative, like a prescription, like a muscle relaxer or something, they would potentiate, they would combine with it.
My general concern is if somebody is doing
Not those,
what's called a
no.
narrow therapeutic margin, i.e. if you took too much, bad things happen, or
Yeah.
you didn't take enough, bad things happen, such as blood thinners, seizure medications, immunosuppressants, and when I say immunosuppressants, the only ones I actually care about are the ones that are for organ rejection. There's so many immunosuppressants, I'm like, whatever. Blood thinners, MAOIs, i.e. The psych meds. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but
so
those are the
only-
biggies.
Yeah, only that one, and that's even just because I'm being hyper conscious.
Yeah.
That's all. But yeah, but that's it.
Yeah,
wouldn't
I usually,
hesitate.
and I will say, I do teach, I regularly do a free herb drug interaction class that I consider practitioner level
All
and
the time we do this
appropriate.
one.
And I think it's recorded on our YouTube channel. So Tradition School of Herbal Studies on YouTube. Subscribe now,
Yes.
watch all of them.
And then last Friday of the month, how do we hop onto that?
What's that? I'm sorry.
The last Friday of the month, how do we hop onto that? It's similar to this, where we're doing that one
On
that one
Facebook,
on
actually.
Facebook,
Yeah.
so that you just watch for it, and you just, when you see him go on live, then you
And
go.
those are all archived on the YouTube page as well. So you can even watch the insanity that
But-
ensues with all of that.
But I will tell you with that,
Super fun.
if ahead of time, like right now, and we have one of our students in particular is just a champ at this, like the winner.
yeah.
If you start now with giving us questions,
Yay, Brittany.
we have pages, we start with pages of questions, typed questions, but it's something that
We love it if you send us the questions ahead
it's
of
all
time
over the
on the
place with
event.
the herbal students. I mean, all over the
Yeah.
place, like one question after
She
the
has
other.
the best questions.
Yeah, but absolutely, it can be something spiritual too. We both are traditional healers, and so it could be anything from what act like this is my med list. How do I know? To I think I have a demon. Do you recommend a
Yeah.
plant?
And
Like,
just
it's like
watch.
what
I think I've got the March one. I've already made the Facebook event, so you can go ahead and just join that, because I start the live feed from the event, so you have to say you're going in that way.
and then it will trigger you when it comes
Yeah,
on. Mhm, yeah, and so it is. You do
And
think
that's
it's already
6,
up,
and
right?
it's weird. Most of our classes we do at 6:30. That one we start at 6
because it's a lot.
because I want to
We're a
go
lot.
out for dinner afterwards.
Yeah. We're a lot. Yes, ma'am.
And can you overdo Trickola?
You can overdo any of these, and that's your body needs to have a peristalsis effect. It needs to understand it has a job to do.
And so she mentioned Triphala,
Yeah.
and I debated with myself whether to put this in here because it's very specific Ayurvedic combination of 3 herbs,
Mhm.
one of which I know you can grow here because I'm doing it.
Yep.
And it's considered a normalizer, that it's got some citrus in there, some pectin-containing
Not
herbs
bad for you.
that kind of helps with both constipation and diarrhea. We've got it at the clinic.
And those children that we mentioned, that's the only thing that's keeping them right now.
Yeah, so Triphala, potato patata, I would say is generally safe. I'm sure you could overdose on it.
Take too much, but I do take daily. Like,
So I want to know why you, in my head, why do you need to take that daily? What's going on?
If I don't take it daily, I don't go daily.
I
Yeah.
know, and that's the, like, I want to
And-
know why.
and
Yeah, and so that it would fit. Yeah.
Triphala is considered appropriate to do daily,
Mhm.
but still I'd go back to the how come you shouldn't have to need
Right.
anything other than food and water as a general rule. But it is considered a normalizer, used both constipation and diarrhea, and thought to help with improvement of digestion. It's high in fiber, but other good stuff in
It
there.
is, out of all the weird things that we could do,
Yeah.
that is one of the most average and normal, because it's considered to be normalizing. So it goes both cold and dry. I mean, cold
Yeah.
and hot and wet and dry. That is one that we're okay with. Again, we shouldn't be eating broccoli every single day. We should be changing our food with the season. Why do you need that every day instead of seasonally? And so I would want to get to what was going on.
And I will say, I also with Triphala, making sure it's organic, because
Good call.
I hate to say it, things that come out of China, Chinese herbalist here, right?
Mhm.
And things that come out of India,
Asia,
both of
Mhm.
which have really serious pollution issues. And so
their best attempts.
at
Yeah.
least, I forget the 3 herbs that are in the Triphala, but at least one of them is a citrus. And all of
The
your citruses
gooseberry.
are heavily sprayed, so it darn sure better be organic
I
if you're gonna do it every day.
It's Traditions.
Mhm.
Well,
Nice.
that was
then
a great
you're solid.
choice.
You got it. Yeah.
I love it. It's
Mhm.
better than the one I
Yeah.
use before.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We try. We vet everything. So
Any other
any other questions, either online or
Yeah, yeah.
otherwise?
Silly,
Mhm.
the pH balance.
Yeah.
of the stomach. Get the test, you said normally we're not tested for it.
Right.
Well, the test that I like the most, not to get your actual number, it's if you buy a cheap bottle of HCL and you take it and you get heartburn, you don't need it.
Then you don't need it, and you probably have high stomach
Yeah, go
acid.
take the bottle back and get your money.
I
It's
mean,
as easy as that.
otherwise
But
you,
they said you are getting a blood test, I get it.
it's actually,
It's
it's
a
not a
different
blood,
test.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So your
you-
blood pH is not the same as your stomach pH.
Yeah, so,
mhm.
and your blood pH is a normal part of the CMP. So if they're doing a complete metabolic
I was
panel,
gonna say,
they
what's a
fre-
CMP?
yeah,
Bob?
they frequently do that. They'll also test your urine pH. And
All
generally those are
separate
fine.
things. Yeah.
But, and literally, if those were seriously out of whack, you'd be in the hospital. But for your pH of your stomach, they actually, you have to go to a gastroenterologist, and I believe they actually intubate, they're not intubate, but they'll actually do an endoscopy with a special little attachment.
So we use this and do this so much both on ourselves and other people because it's such an issue. I'm here to tell you, I take more than I'm supposed to take. It's an egregious amount. It's insane. And if I'm not paying attention, one night I'll get heartburn and be like, oh, I took
Forgot.
too much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I took too much or something like that. Like after, like, yeah.
On that, it's 9 o'clock. Thank you all for giving up your Friday evening. If you have more questions, we'll hang. But
We'll
run,
end this, but if
flee.
you have more
Thank you
questions-
all. I can't believe how many people showed up, both online and in person. So
Bye, you
Y'all
guys
rock.
online.
thank you for the great questions.
If anybody has any questions, I'm happy, or Bob's happy to be here and continue that and finish that as needed.
I'm curious what you're talking about.
Oh, so that's a thing.
It's not on the schedule at the moment.
I just did it needs to be an intensive, and I did a 2 Thursday night, really long night series of it.
It was super
It's
yummy.
super good.
Yeah.
And several
I was
students,
impressed.
yeah, several students are in here that like ate some of the foods this weekend when we were here.
Oh
and
yeah, those were
any way
minor.
to sneak in any herbals in the way that we should be eating and being
Oh,
very
yeah.
diverse about the nutrients that are in them. And so because it's such a hard prep class, I need a minimum for it. I need to make sure I do. I can't
Yeah.
do it for 5 people because I have to make a bunch
It
of
costs a
food.
lot of money and
Yeah, and
everything else.
it's an arduous. And so as long as we have the need, and you're like the 400th person that's asked recently. And so we'll get it back on the schedule as soon as possible.
We'll work maybe this summer or something. We'll get it back on. the
Don't worry
schedule.
about that. That's okay.
Okay, I'm gonna put it back. It's
Oh,
I
What's
was
up?
like,
What you got?
Well, Prigo who can't sleep.
mhm.
She has 2 more months.
I was gonna say, how far along is she?
She's like almost.
How is she eating?
Really healthy. Like she doesn't eat any red meat.
That's the
no-
problem.
No red meat.
She needs red meat.
She's got to feed for
That's the problem.
2.
That's literally the problem. That's why I asked you.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's probably
Mhm.
anemic or
She's
borderline
anemic, and so the baby's taking everything. So all of her minerals, her dense things are going to make another person. And and if you have to eat blood and bones to grow blood and
Girl,
bones.
I know. I eat liver when I was pregnant.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's
wouldn't
what
be
it is.
wrong for her.
That's what it is. Mhm.
Okay.
She's restless because
And-
she's not
And
sturdy
that
and heavy. in
she
her body.
shouldn't like run out and buy an iron supplement.
No, just
Unless
some-
you get blood work to test it,
Yeah.
because that could be
Right,
detrimental.
yeah. And with most pregnancies, you do take an iron supplement. So she's not eating red meat.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
She's ungrounded.
But
she's
yeah, it's probably
restless.
that.
And
Yeah.
then I have to just grab a card by one of my son's teachers. They're trying to diagnose her with Hashimoto's.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, let's get all the blood work.
Yes,
Make sure they test
100%.
everything, and then
It's $10 waste if she doesn't.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I said.
Yeah,
to her.
that's
I'm like,
like-
do not take anything, please.
Yes, just let's look at her
And
blood work. We'll
Hashimoto's a
see.
pain for all of us. you
Yeah,
know, like-
but it's okay.
but it's
like we
doable.
figure it out. Yeah, it's doable for sure.
Okay, and one more question. So I signed up, me being smart as I am, for this class coming in this weekend, but I have a bunch of stuff going on. So can I take the other
The other 2
Flower, yes,
after that, they're one after their sequence. So if you don't
I
have
just
this
have to
one,
skip.
yeah. So if you don't have this one, you can't have the other 2. It
So
has
I'm
to be
just gonna skip to your offer that, well, I paid for all 3.
Oh,
Okay.
currently, so I just have to wait till your offer.
Do you wanna just do it
Do the
online
recording.
and do the recording?
I can't, I have a baby shower. I have like
No,
so many.
You get the recording. You could do it by yourself and write down your questions and ask me, and then be able to come to the second one.
Okay.
So like it's recorded. You can
Okay.
have the recording, like
Yeah.
the link to the
Okay.
recording, and then sit through it yourself.
Yeah,
Good luck.
and like,
It's
and if-
so hard.
yeah,
I know.
especially
Put
if,
it on headphones and clean the house or go in the garden.
and if you only miss like one, like if you miss the first day, you can listen to the recording, and then come to the second day, or vice
Well, I
versa.
have
It's a hell of a shower. Huh?
They're gonna come in tomorrow and they're not leaving Sunday.
Oh, God.
Good luck with that.
Have fun.
But
I
but
get
you're
to
right.
counsel them, so it doesn't-
Yeah, but you're right, because I would have a hard time sitting in front of it too. So put it on and go walk, put it in the car, put it wherever. You have a little bit of time to like
It'll be
walk
there for a
through it.
month. Yeah.
Because I have to qualify your hours, like I have to cover something with
That is
you
why I wanted
to
to
get
ask
you to
Yeah.
be able to
Certified.
be listed on the FES website. I have to say that you had X amount of hours of history of
Mm.
things
Okay.
like that, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
alright, no, I will figure it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, hon.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Are you gonna do anything like this? This is gut health.
Yeah.
We do it all the time for
No,
all.
but are you gonna do anything with detoxing with the liver?
Probably not.
Okay.
And I only say that is without a doubt it's a thing, but we generally don't
Don't
recommend detoxing.
Yeah.
Most of us, our body needs to get tuned up so that it does what it's supposed to. Our kidneys, liver, and intestines kind of do what they're supposed to if they're nourished correctly and balanced correctly. So it's funny. I had somebody recently that they were like, no, I'm going to do a detox. I was like, fine, let me go and see what I could recommend that I don't feel horrendous about. And the more I did it, I was like, the detoxes are kind of BS because they usually just make you poop a lot. And then they give you glutathione and a bunch of anti-inflammatory supplements. And I'm like, okay, that's not a detox. That's giving the body nourishment so that it functions correctly. And we can do that without,
Gut is really more important, the digestion.
yeah, and the gut's super. Without the gut, you got nothing. And the liver is a really amazing organ that really doesn't need a lot of, you know,
Unless you have a disease.
yeah,
Right.
if you have, you know, cirrhosis or something like that, and then we do things to make it function better, and drink some water, and then your kidneys work great.
Well, I mean, I'd like to come back and make another appointment.
You're allowed.
No, but and bring my blood work.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
You're
I was
welcome.
just gonna mention the school you were talking about for slide.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you,
I
God, I couldn't
I
think
was
of the
trying
name
to
of
yell
it.
at it from the, like, I didn't want to yell
The
squatty
squatty
potty as I'm
potty.
printing out a poop chart
Yes,
for you.
and I've never used it, but I've heard nothing but amazing things from it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I got my uncle on it, and then he got one of his friends on it.
Oh,
and
that's
it was
hilarious.
amazing.
We had friends using it. We're like, we gotta get one of those.
Any change or any difference, you don't know. It's okay.
I know.
When we were in
A
class,
couple of
I-
phone books
we were
or
in class
something. Nobody
last
uses
night,
those anymore.
and with stones, and had a
Oh,
poor
thank
woman
you.
who was so
I'm glad you
sensitive
came.
and telling me she didn't see anything wrong, she couldn't tell a difference, but you could tell by her
Yeah.
reactions that she was very sensitive. And so it's a thing. It's okay. It's all right.
Actually,
I
like,
want to
it
be able to.
depends on the individual, but chamomile is a wonderful after dinner
Right,
tea.
I agree.
And it's,
I
yeah,
know for me.
and
it's
especially, and you don't have to
like
make it
I've had
nasty and
chronic
bitter.
rash of
So like you can just do a very
unexplained headaches
mild
and stuff,
one,
and we're
and
all
it's,
identical in the way that it
and
is. We
fennel
think it's
tea
the
is
5G.
both of those are
Like-
very normal. And you put them together.
Right, yeah, because I know ginger, but that wakes me up.
Well, and that's it. Like,
Yeah.
no, it is a stimulating digestive and too warm for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So fennel and chamomile is kind of like, yeah, that's kind of safe for
Yeah.
everybody.
So,
Yeah.
so that's one of our most hidden places for things like gluten accidentally or toxins accidentally. It's
What
usually
is
the
it?
clumping agent. And so
Oh.
we all of our spices are not pre-done. They're single done plants. So we,
I know
you
Gundry, yeah.
fennel,
So
mint, like a single done, and then we put them together in a blend.
Yeah.
But it's not anything that we can buy already together in a blend. So we have things that are unsspiced altogether, and then we have to. put
Yes.
the
And
spice
so
on.
I just finished the books and listening to
I
podcasts like.
don't,
this.
I
think
I
it's
have a
really
single.
It's
Oh,
funny.
is
We
that
don't,
awesome?
yeah, we
I
don't.
don't know how it looks, but I think like autoimmune is weird because it's. the
Choose
body-
It's telling us
separately
something.
versus
Yes, yeah.
The body's working itself.
So they're not,
And it-
Now
they're
we
and
know
not.
about lectins, so
Yeah.
I'm like.
So-
And
so
it's
what's
funny,
the
the
problem?
lectin, it's like
You're
everybody's got an
reacting to
angle,
one?
and I always go back to energetics and
Yes,
traditional
yeah.
use.
Mhm.
But when we look
Yeah.
at how things like the legumes,
Yep.
you know, very high lectins and all of that, how those were
Is it
classically
fermented?
prepared with the soak overnight, the changing out the water before
Okay,
you
so
cook them,
it needs to
the
be
removal
fermented.
of the tomato
Yeah, it needs to be
skin.
fermented.
And so
And
when
it,
we start to look at the
more than likely
nightshades, and
should
things, like
produce
when we
should
look,
be
right, all
healthier
of those
and not
traditional
from China.
cultural practices, because not that autoimmune
Okay.
disease didn't
Yeah,
exist before, but it wasn't as prevalent. But I never think there's a single cause
Yeah.
for anything.
Mhm.
They always is like, how come? You know, is it nightshades? Is it environmental toxins? Is it
Yes, yeah, absolutely, 100%,
Yes.
yeah.
Genetics? Yeah.
Making sure, well, the other thing is, there's usually a lot of sea vegetables that.
What's your
come with
favorite
pizza,
food?
Depending on which one's
Yeah.
better. You have to make those seeds.
Right.
Yeah,
Like screw the lectins. If
only
that's the old cookie diet, you're screwed, you know?
If they're from the West Coast,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
They are a slight radioactivity because of Fukushima. 100%. They're not at the level where you have to make a public
Yeah.
announcement on it. They're the level right
yeah.
below.
So luckily, so the difference. But
See,
thank you so much.
you
That
are
was
very
wonderful.
welcome.
That they're
Glad you enjoyed it.
Atlantic water, not Pacific
Yeah,
water.
we'll try to extend to
Awesome.
more
Or do it
time.
online.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I hate
But
it.
I will
What
also
was it doing? It was giving you like
Awesome.
a wave of energy that was going on.
Oh,
And
perfect.
we're going together.
Awesome.
And nice to meet you, Renee.
Bye.
Well, thank you. Just
Mhm.
thank you, Renee.
Bye, nice seeing you.